Chapter 849. Zhou Fachang saw a flash of green light beside him, and Mao Yucheng of the Maoshan sect appeared in front of him. The old elder of the Chuanjian dragon sect was shocked. He immediately stopped and shouted, "Nonsense, what are you doing here?" Mao Yucheng quickly glanced at Ding Nan, who was not far away. She straightened her neck and said, "I've been cultivating since I was a child. Is it just to become an immortal? In the face of a great disaster, if we cultivators don't step forward bravely, what can we do?" Her words were dignified. Even Zhou Fachang was choked and didn't know what to say. However, he was old and shrewd. He could see through it at a glance. In fact, it was just a fight between girls. She was only in her early 20s now. She was in her 3rd or 4th year of university. She was young and in her prime. She was also the most proud and arrogant age. When she lost her temper, even the heavenly god wouldn't buy it, let alone the mystical silver fox. Moreover, just now, the mystical silver fox had killed a master at the level of thunder retribution with a bolt of heavenly thunder. They were far away, so they didn't see clearly who had been killed. Even if they saw clearly, they didn't know what kind of status and strength Yoshida Shinura had in the Japanese cultivation world. The ignorant were fearless. Although Mao Yucheng was a good cultivator and was not inferior to Zi Yuan in terms of erudition, she knew nothing about the Japanese cultivation world. She thought that the mystical silver fox had just killed a cat or dog, a nobody. Mao Yucheng didn't know the details, and Ding Nan, who had become a monk halfway, didn't know how powerful it was. The reason why Zhou Fachang didn't want them to come out was that he felt that both of them were rare talents in the Chinese cultivation world. It was rare and commendable for them to have such cultivation at such a young age. He wanted to leave more seeds and vitality for the Chinese cultivation world. However, these two little girls were disappointing. At this time they were fighting. Zhou Fachang looked at the two little girls who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He was so angry that he blew his beard and glared at them. But at this time, it was very inappropriate for them to go back. Moreover, even if they survived in the future, they would be very sad, and it would even affect their future cultivation. Zhou Fachang stamped his feet and glared at them. He wanted to scold them, but he forced himself to hold back. He had to hold back his anger and said, "You two stay behind me later. Don't act rashly. Otherwise, you can't blame me if your body and soul are destroyed." After that, the long sword in his hand shook, and he let out a long roar. He said loudly, "Mystical silver fox, do you recognize the sword in my hand?" Although his voice was a bit old, it was still loud and clear. His shout echoed throughout the world, and was clearly transmitted into the mountain range opposite of them, which was filled with killing intent. When the mystical silver fox heard this, her heart skipped a beat, and she couldn't help but have some distracting thoughts. She subconsciously looked back, and suddenly, the Japanese cultivation world immediately had precious time to breathe. In an instant, they worked together, and countless magic arts and magic treasures were blasted at the mystical silver fox. This time the counterattack was shockingly powerful. From afar, a wave of colorful light surged towards the mystical silver fox, like a raging wave that could topple mountains and overturn the seas. The reason why the silver fox had been able to suppress the Japanese cultivation world was that she had always relied on her speed to be faster than theirs. As the saying goes, one step faster, all the steps faster. Even the strong magic array set up by the Buddhist cultivators on the mountain ridge could not slow her down. Even the countless magic treasures and magic arts around her could not distract her at all. However, as soon as Zhou Fachang lit up the sword in his hand, a very familiar aura immediately came. The silver fox was shocked. After a thought, her body was a little sluggish, and her speed slowed down a little. It was this point that made the Japanese cultivation world finally catch up and fight back. Although the mystical silver fox was strong, she did not dare to face so many magic treasures and magic arts with her body. The 7 golden tails behind her suddenly rolled up in front of her, like a golden barrier wall, blocking in front of her. There was an earth-shaking sound, and countless magic treasures and magic arts were bombarded on the 7 golden fox tails. Even the mystical silver fox's tail was invulnerable to water and fire, and it was not afraid of any magic treasures, but it could not bear it. It was dented, and the mystical silver fox was forced to retreat again and again, out of the mountain ridge. The silver fox was floating in the air, looking a little angry. With a fierce flick of her 7 fox tails, the barrier instantly turned into a steel whip. She whipped at the mountain, and with a bang, she whipped at the Japanese cultivators. She was like a giant smashing an ant on a mountain with a hammer. When the cultivators of various sects in Japan saw the 7 golden fox tails above their heads smashing down, they all shouted loudly. The chanting of the Buddhist cultivators was even louder, and many huge Vajrayakshas flew out of the magic circle. These Vajrayakshas were all Buddhist gods. Although they resisted the overwhelming attack with a bang, many monks could not stand the fierce shock. They were slapped so hard that the chi and blood in their chests were rolling. They spat out blood and fell to the ground. Fortunately, there were many monks. Some of them fell down, and someone immediately came forward to drag them away. Almost in the next second, someone made up for them, so that the magic circle could continue to be maintained. The mystical silver fox just wanted to vent her anger, and to prevent the other party from counterattacking. As expected, after her smash, the cultivators of various sects in Japan on the mountain were a little quiet, and did not dare to continue to attack. They were afraid that the mystical silver fox would attack them a few more times. If they were not smashed to death, they would be shocked to death by the rebound force caused by the collision between the spiritual power. Seeing that they had become much more obedient, the mystical silver fox turned her head, and looked at Zhou Fachang unkindly. Her blood-red eyes swept up and down for a while, and finally fell on the sword in Zhou Fachang's hand. The long sword was about 2 feet and 3 inches long and 4 inches wide. The body of the sword was full of patterns, more like runes and subtle magic circles. Other than that, there was nothing special about it. At first glance, ordinary people could not recognize what kind of sword it was. However, the mystical silver fox's eyes narrowed. She instantly remembered that when she was besieged by people in China, there were several powerful magical weapons that left a deep impression on her body. The sword in front of her was one of them. The mystical silver fox slowly turned around, and turned her back to the cultivators of the Japanese cultivation world. When the cultivators of various sects in Japan saw that the mystical silver fox was so arrogant, as if she had nothing to fear and regarded them as nothing, they were all furious. However, they wanted to attack from behind, but they saw the 7 golden fox tails behind the mystical silver fox, hanging upside down in the air like a waterfall. Although they looked calm, they could vaguely see that they had been eager to have a try, as if they were staring at them covetously. In the next second, they would smash the sky and the earth again. The mystical silver fox's voice was cold. She stared at the sword in Zhou Fachang's hand and said, "Is this the immortal trapping sword?" Zhou Fachang was old and shrewd. With a simple sentence, he solved the problem of the Japanese cultivation world. He gently shook the long sword in his hand, and suddenly the immortal trapping sword disappeared in his hand. He said in a long voice, "You have good eyesight. It is indeed the immortal trapping sword." As soon as she heard the name of the immortal trapping sword, Ding Nan didn't understand it, because she entered the sect late. However, Mao Yuchang suddenly trembled, and looked at Zhou Fachang with her eyes wide open. She knew that there were 5 famous swords in the Taoist cultivation world. The top one was the personal magic weapon of the Yellow Emperor Xian Yuan, which was used to kill the 2 ancient fierce gods, Xingtian and Qiyu. The next ones were the Sanhuang sword, the 4 immortal killing swords, the 7 stars sword, and the 8 wilds and 6 swords. The 4 immortal killing swords were forged by the ancient Taoist ancestor Hong Jun, with the essence of 5 metals, smelted with the fire of the earth's core, quenched with the water of the cold pool, and then used 81 kinds of extreme poisons in the world to nourish its fierce qi. 81 kinds of rare spiritual medicines to nourish its spiritual qi. When it came out of the furnace, it even made the genuine immortals die with the sword. Later, Hong Jun passed on the 4 swords, namely the immortal killing sword, the immortal killing sword, the immortal trapping sword, and the immortal slashing sword to his disciple, sect leader Tong Tian of the Jie school. With the help of these 4 swords, sect leader Tong Tian formed the immortal killing formation, and fought against the Yuanshi Tianzuan, Taishang Laojun, Ba, and Patriarch Bodhi alone. The power of these magic weapons could be imagined. These 4 swords each had their own magical uses. The immortal killing sword specialized in killing the soul and yang spirit of a cultivator. The immortal killing sword specialized in killing the body of a cultivator. The immortal trapping sword specialized in killing the wisdom and spiritual consciousness of a cultivator. And the immortal slashing sword specialized in cutting off a cultivator's escape route. Therefore, in the Chinese cultivation world at that time, it was said that once the 4 swords appeared, they would be invincible in the world. No matter if one was a celestial immortal or a Vajra Arhat. As long as one was in the sword formation of the 4 immortal killing swords, there was no way to go to heaven, no way to enter the earth, no way to save them, and no way to save them. However, because the 4 immortal killing swords had to be combined to be extremely powerful, it was ranked behind the San Huang sword. Otherwise, with the power of the 4 immortal killing swords, if the 4 swords were combined, the power would not be inferior to that of the Xianyuan sword. Even when the mystical silver fox had the real body of the heavenly fox, although she was immune to almost all magic arts and magic treasures, she was still quite afraid of these 5 magic swords. Fortunately, the Xianyuan sword and the 4 immortal killing swords had long been lost. Otherwise, as soon as the 4 immortal killing swords appeared, she would immediately have to flee. Although the mystical silver fox was conceited, she would never think that she was stronger than the 3 religions and 4 saints combined. When she saw that Zhou Fachang was holding the immortal trapping sword that had hurt her 1,000 years ago, she immediately became very vigilant. She couldn't help looking around, as if there was no trace of the immortal trapping sword in the world. Zhou Fachang knew that his cultivation was not as good as that of the mystical silver fox, so he used psychological warfare to deal with her. This psychological warfare could not be used casually. If he hadn't had the immortal trapping sword of the 4 immortal killing swords in his hand, which made her very afraid, she would have slapped herself to death. When Zhou Fachang saw that the mystical silver fox was hesitating as expected, he knew that his plan had succeeded. He said loudly, "Mystical silver fox, since you know this sword, why don't you surrender?" As the saying goes, an old man who doesn't die is a thief. Zhou Fachang was as cunning as a thief. Every word he said was provocative and heart-wrenching. In the eyes of others, the mystical silver fox was afraid that she would have killed someone at this time. However, he made the mystical silver fox more and more vigilant, and did not dare to act rashly. Zhou Fachang saw that she was standing there with a gloomy face. Her eyes flickered and she looked around. He said, "Mystical silver fox, if you don't surrender now, you will have practiced your spiritual energy cultivation for 1,000 years in vain." The mystical silver fox narrowed her eyes. She was not angry but shocked. Seeing Zhou Fachang's fearless look, she was suspicious in her heart. But after all, she was not an ordinary person. It was impossible for her to surrender to Zhou Fachang with a few words. The mystical silver fox's heart moved slightly, and her suspicious face suddenly became ferocious. Her body moved and her fingers were like hooks. In an instant, she appeared in front of Zhou Fachang and said sternly, "Old thing, how dare you lie to me?" Zhou Fachang had been staring at the mystical silver fox with vigilance. When a bad omen flashed in his heart, his body immediately moved and disappeared. As soon as he disappeared, the mystical silver fox tore the shadow of his body into pieces. If he waited for the figure of the mystical silver fox to disappear, and then dodged, he was afraid that his body and soul would have been destroyed at this time. As soon as the figure of the mystical silver fox moved, countless swords appeared between heaven and earth in an instant. They rushed towards the mystical silver fox like a storm. This was the immortal trap formation of the 4 immortal swords. Chapter 850. Zhou Chang was old and experienced. With a few words, he led the mystical silver fox into the trap. Everyone saw the sword light shooting in all directions in the sky, and the sword chi soaring into the sky. The light and shadow of the immortal trapping sword were everywhere, but the real body of the immortal trapping sword could not be seen anywhere. Although the mystical silver fox was extremely fast, she could not escape from the overwhelming sword shadows. At this time, her body was almost invisible. There were strong winds and sword chi everywhere. It was so cold that it made people's hair stand on end. Ordinary people only felt that if they were in it, they would be pierced by thousands of swords and killed in an instant. At this time, the cultivators of various sects in Japan on the other side of the mountain could only widen their eyes at this time. This was the first time for many of them to see this kind of ancient magic weapon. They were all stunned and almost speechless. Ayase Chuyan looked at the sword chi dancing wildly in the sky. The mystical silver fox had been so arrogant before, but it was so suppressed that her figure disappeared. She could only vaguely see that she had shrunk into a ball. The 7 golden fox tails presented a spherical shield, tightly wrapping the body of the mystical silver fox. Ayase Chuyan sighed for a moment and said, "The treasures of China are really enviable." Although there were many magic weapons in the Japanese cultivation world, their country was extremely short of materials, and most of the magic weapons were not high-grade. In the Ming Dynasty, an ordinary military horse could immediately be sold at a sky-high price in the Warring States period of Japan. It could be said to be a horse that could not be bought with money. Among them, the favorite horse of the famous General Maeda Keiji in the Warring States period, Songfeng, was famous in the history of Japan. It was one of the most famous horses in the Warring States period. However, this ancient horse was only a medium-sized horse in the Ming Dynasty of China. If the superior horse was taken to Japan for a walk, it would no longer be a horse, but a legendary divine beast. It could be seen from this that Japan was short of materials. In a country that was extremely short of materials, it was naturally impossible for there to be any good magic weapons refined. Therefore, the Japanese cultivation world mostly practiced the art of summoning ghosts, while the Chinese cultivation world often fought with magic weapons. It was fine if they didn't take out this kind of ancient magic weapon. The Japanese cultivators wouldn't think that the Chinese cultivation world was amazing. But just now, they had been killed by the mystical silver fox without the power to fight back. In the blink of an eye, the mystical silver fox had been killed without the power to fight back. The reason was that the Chinese cultivation world had shown a celestial trapping sword. For a moment, the cultivators of various sects in Japan looked ahead with extremely complicated gazes. Some of them had evil thoughts, and their eyes turned red with envy. At this time, Mao Yicheng and Ding Nen also forgot their previous unhappiness. They stared at the mystical silver fox in the air with their eyes wide open. They couldn't help clenching their fists tightly, and their eyes didn't blink. They just wished that the immortal trapping sword would kill the mystical silver fox on the spot in the next second. Everyone saw that the mystical silver fox had been suppressed to the point that she had no power to fight back. But only Zhou Chang knew that the greatest power of the immortal trapping sword was that it could trap the opponent with continuous attacks, make the opponent lose his mind, and make the wrong move. The immortal trapping sword itself was naturally very powerful, far better than ordinary magic weapons. But if it was used to deal with the mystical silver fox, it would be much worse. At this time, the world was full of sword chi. Each sword chi was like a precious sword, rushing towards the mystical silver fox. However, none of the sword chi could pierce through the defensive shell formed by the 7 golden tails of the mystical silver fox. The 7 tails wrapped up all the angles of the mystical silver fox, leaving no gap, and it was not hurt at all. Although it gave the opponent a powerful attack, it was not life-threatening. Zhou Chang's original intention was to trap the mystical silver fox, and buy more time for Wang Yuanshan's arrival. He didn't expect to kill the mystical silver fox with this immortal trapping sword. Although Zhou Chang himself was a master of thunder retribution, and could be called a top cultivator in the Chinese cultivation world, compared with the mystical silver fox, he was still a long way behind. His face was as dark as water, and his eyes were fixed on the mystical silver fox in the violent sword chi. He was afraid that she would break free from the immortal trapping formation in the next second. Seeing this scene, Ding Nan suddenly thought of something and thought to herself, now that the mystical silver fox is trapped in this immortal killing formation, what will happen if I use the Hell Wuzhong to capture her soul? Will the mystical silver fox be killed by me? If I can kill the mystical silver fox, I'm afraid that I will become famous in the future. Who in the world will dare to look at me? The more she thought about it, the hotter her heart became. Her hand unconsciously reached into her sleeve. The moment her fingertips touched the ice-cold handle of the Hell Wuzhong, her fingers trembled. But then, she firmly and forcefully gripped the Rui scepter. She clenched the Rui scepter firmly and firmly. As soon as she thought about it, she couldn't stop it anymore. All she thought about was how to make a name for herself and make people look at her. How could Zhou Chang have expected that this beautiful girl, who was as beautiful as a flower, would be so bold at this time that she dared to take the initiative to provoke the mystical silver fox? Although Mao Yichang had followed them on impulse before, after calming down, she positioned herself as a soy sauce. It was good for her to be a soy sauce at a close distance. She could avoid participating in the battle as much as possible. Otherwise, she would be killed in seconds when they met. How bad would that be? Therefore, Mao Yichang did not expect that the guy beside her would dare to take the initiative to attack. Without them noticing it, Ding Nan suddenly put one hand in her sleeve and shouted, "Mystical silver fox." Her shout was not very obvious in the roar of the overwhelming sword chi. But in an instant, a thick black mist rushed out of Ding Nan's sleeve and rushed toward the mystical silver fox like a torrent. Zhou Chang and Mao Yichang were shocked at the same time. Their faces suddenly changed, and they exclaimed in unison, "Hell Wuzhang." As they spoke, their eyes were full of horror and fear. If Zhou Chang had the immortal trapping sword in his hand, Mao Yichang would only be surprised, but she didn't think it was strange. Logically speaking, for a sect as powerful as the Chuanjian Dragon sect, it wasn't strange for its founding elder to have a sect-guarding artifact in his possession. Even the Linggong sect, which had been in decline, still had 3 powerful magical weapons. One of the 3 powerful magical weapons was the Bahuang and Liuhe, one of the 5 great Taoist swords. Even the Linggong sect was like this, let alone the Chuanjian Dragon sect. But Ding Nan was different. What kind of sect was the Yinyang sect? It could be said to be the least popular sect in the Chinese cultivation world. Ding Nan, who had become a monk halfway through her life, suddenly took out the Hell Wuzhong sword. This was really frightening. It was as if 2 cowboys did not like each other and decided to have a duel. One of them had just turned around to pull out his gun and was about to pull the trigger when he suddenly realized that the guy in front of him had turned into Iron Man with gun barrels sticking out from all over his body and pointing at him. This is too outrageous, isn't it? Mao Yichang's mind buzzed, and she unconsciously said in her heart, how could she have such a terrifying powerful magical weapon? Just now, I actually wanted to fight with her one-on-one. Although Mao Yichang was conceited, she would never be conceited enough to think that she could defeat an opponent who was at the same level as her and had the Hell Wuzhong. She was looking at Ding Nan in fear, but in the blink of an eye, the black mist rushed to the golden barrier of the mystical silver fox. The 7 tails of the mystical silver fox could resist most of the magic arts and magic treasures, but they could not resist the soul erosion of the Hell 5 feet. The mystical silver fox was hiding in the barrier and thinking about the countermeasures in front of her. Suddenly, she saw a black mist pouncing on her through her barrier. In the blink of an eye, it pounced on her and turned into a few ferocious ghosts, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws at her. At this time, the mystical silver fox had no way to avoid it, so she could only bear it. Fortunately, her cultivation was too high. When she was invaded by this evil qi, she immediately felt that the blood in her body was almost frozen, and the zhenqi in her body suddenly slowed down. The mystical silver fox was furious. Her blood-red eyes widened, and she immediately wanted to rush out and kill people. But just as she was about to move, a thought suddenly flashed through her mind, and a sneer appeared at the corner of her mouth. At this time, the people on both sides of the mountain saw Ding Nan shout loudly, and a black smoke rushed straight to the mystical silver fox. Then, the 7 golden tails beside the mystical silver fox instantly drooped down, and there were countless flaws in her body. This time, all the cultivators on both sides of the mountain were stunned, but soon, they realized one thing with great excitement in their minds. The mystical silver fox's defense had been broken, and she had a flaw. Almost at the same time, countless magic arts and powerful magical weapons flew out of the mountains on both sides in an instant. Like a storm, they rushed toward the mystical silver fox. At this time, the magic arts and powerful magical weapons on both sides were really saturated to an extremely terrifying extent. It was as if a tsunami that connected the sky and the earth had surged out from both sides at the same time, slapping toward the mystical silver fox. Zhou Chang didn't expect that at this moment, the mystical silver fox would be hit by Ding Nan's Hell 5 feet. He was stunned at first, and then he was ecstatic. With a thought, he controlled the immortal trapping sword to stab the mystical silver fox. The flaw of the mystical silver fox only appeared for a moment, and soon she mobilized her Jinqi again. Her 7 fox tails twisted crazily, blocking the countless magic arts and powerful magical weapons that were already close to her. Zhou Chang saw it clearly from the side. While the mystical silver fox was busy dealing with the countless powerful magical weapons and magic arts that had already approached her, he controlled the immortal trapping sword, which had shown its true body, and watched covetously. At this time, Ding Nan happened to shout again, "Mystical silver fox!" A thick rolling black smoke swallowed the mystical silver fox in an instant. When the mystical silver fox broke free again, the immortal trapping sword controlled by Zhou Chang flashed with lightning and fiercely stabbed at the mystical silver fox's chest. Suddenly, with a puff, the mystical silver fox screamed, and her chest was immediately pierced through. For a moment, everyone was stunned. They could hardly believe their eyes. The devil who had once been invincible in the world and dominated the cultivation world of the Middle Sun had died just like that. At this time, Ding Nan's mind was also buzzing, and then she was ecstatic. She couldn't help shouting loudly, "Dead, the mystical silver fox is dead. I killed the mystical silver fox." Chapter 851. As the mystical silver fox was hit by the sword, in an instant, Su Ye's killing stone scenic area was completely quiet. The magic, which had been overwhelming like a storm, suddenly disappeared, and the mystical silver fox disappeared. You almost there. As the immortal trapping sword had revealed its true form, the piercingly cold sword aura that pervaded everywhere had disappeared. At this time, the surroundings were extremely quiet. Only the sound of the pouring rain and Ding Nan's ecstatic shouts reverberated between heaven and earth. Although the mystical silver fox was not directly killed by Ding Nan, her shout did not cause anyone to sneer or refute, because they all knew that if Ding Nan had not suddenly used such a sinister powerful magical weapon, the immortal trapping sword would not have been able to take advantage of the situation. For a moment, everyone looked at the field with their mouths agape. Their eyes were full of shock and doubt, but soon, some people cheered loudly. Some cultivators who didn't believe that the mystical silver fox had died in such a way couldn't help but feel suspicious in their hearts amid the earth-shaking cheers. Only Zhou Chang's eyebrows were tightly furrowed. His cultivation was extremely high, and he vaguely felt that something was wrong. How famous was the mystical silver fox? As the saying goes, there was no false reputation. How could she be killed so easily? Zhou Chang looked around, and his 2 snow-white eyebrows were knitted tighter and tighter. His eyes were like lightning. He looked at the thick rain curtain, and stared at the mystical silver fox. At this time, the mystical silver fox's body was still in the air. Her 7 fox tails were hanging low in the air, and she was no longer as wild as before. But as the thunderstorm fell, the 7 fox tails were motionless in the air. Suddenly, Zhou Chang's eyes widened, and he let out a roar of extreme fear. "I've been tricked. This is an illusion." Illusions were not created by the Fox Zen sect, but it was the fox spirits of the Fox Zen sect who brought them to the highest level. As the strongest person in the Fox Zen sect for more than 1,000 years, the mystical silver fox had naturally cultivated her illusion skills to the level of perfection. Her illusion skills had already reached the stage of turning fake into real. Others knew that the 4 fairy killing swords were hopeless, so when they saw her being penetrated, they thought that she was dead for sure. Unexpectedly at this moment, the mystical silver fox took advantage of the other party's eagerness to win and Ding Nan's eagerness to seek fame. After Zhou Chang shouted, the figure of the mystical silver fox appeared in front of Ding Nan in an instant. Her face was ferocious, and her blood-red eyes seemed to be burning. Her terrifying eyes stared at Ding Nan, and in an instant, Ding Nan felt that she could not move. Ding Nan's mind exploded, and a thought quickly flashed through her mind. It's over, I'm dead. Her eyes widened as she watched the mystical silver fox's white hands stab at her chest, but she did not react at all. At this time, if it were a Jinshin master, it would be impossible for him to be unable to fight back, let alone be stared at by the mystical silver fox. However, although Ding Nan had quite a lot of adventures, her cultivation speed was too fast. Along the way, she had been opportunistic, and she had not encountered any hardships on the road of cultivation. When she was in the Zhuji phase, her Naiden was not as hard as that of ordinary cultivators. Her resolve wasn't firm, just like Zhou Zhirua, who had learned the 9 white bone claws. Although she could flaunt her might for a moment, and could launch sneak attacks during a battle, causing those who didn't understand her to feel that she was abnormally vicious. But if she were to encounter a true expert in a duel, then she could only surrender and be thoroughly defeated. Mao Yichang, who was standing to one side, was also shocked by the sudden change. Although she had some friction with Ding Nan and was arrogant and conceited, she was kind after all. When she saw that the mystical silver fox was about to kill Ding Nan, she immediately pointed her finger subconsciously. A bolt of lightning flashed in her sleeve and quickly stabbed at the mystical silver fox. The mystical silver fox was really a little afraid of the Hell Wuzhong in Ding Nan's hand. She was even more vigilant than she was about the immortal trapping sword. Therefore, she didn't take Mao Yichang seriously at all. Instead, she moved faster. The 7 golden tails behind her rolled up and immediately slapped at Mao Yichang like a raging wave. With a bang, she flew backward and disappeared in an instant. At this time, Ding Nan was waiting for death with her eyes wide open. Suddenly, she saw Zhou Chang appear in front of the mystical silver fox in the blink of an eye. He held a talisman in his hand and slapped it at the mystical silver fox's head. The Maoshan sect was a famous talisman sect of Chinese Taoism. This talisman was made by Zhou Chang, and its power was no less than that of the celestial master talisman. If it hit, the mystical silver fox's body would immediately be blown into powder. Soon, as Zhou Chang counterattacked the mystical silver fox, he pushed Ding Nan with the other hand and pushed her far away in an instant. He shouted, "Let's go!" Like Zhang Jishuan, Zhou Chang had experienced all kinds of disasters in the Chinese cultivation world. He was heartbroken by the constant loss of masters in the Chinese cultivation world. At this time, when he saw Mao Yichang and Ding Nan, he thought that they were young and promising. In time, they would definitely be brilliant figures in the Chinese cultivation world. He was a person who loved talents very much. He didn't want to see Ding Nan die here like this, so he rushed forward to save her regardless of his own safety. He was old and experienced, and he was an expert in fighting. At the moment of saving people, he could counterattack and threaten the mystical silver fox. Everyone admired him secretly when they saw this kind of method. But unfortunately, the opponent he met was the mystical silver fox. The mystical silver fox's attack suddenly failed. She was furious. She didn't even look at the talisman that Zhou Chang had found for her. She waved her hand and slapped Zhou Chang with a backhand. At the same time, the golden fox tail behind her rolled up and wrapped Zhou Chang's arm in it, like countless vines wrapping around it. Zhou Chang was shocked. He reacted very quickly. With a flick of his 5 fingers, he flicked the talisman towards the mystical silver fox. The two of them were very close to each other, almost fighting close to each other. This move was as fast as lightning, and extremely difficult to guard against. However, the mystical silver fox was the horn that dominated the world with speed. Her figure flashed in an instant, and appeared behind Zhou Chang in an instant. At this time, Zhou Chang's whole body was cold, and a trace of despair flashed through his mind. His magic treasure, the immortal trapping sword, also felt that he was in danger. It immediately rushed to save its master, and pounced on the mystical silver fox like crazy. Because Zhou Chang was controlled by the mystical silver fox, The immortal trapping sword could not use the immortal trapping formation. It surrounded the mystical silver fox with endless attacks like water. It could only show its real body and stab at the mystical silver fox's back. However, the mystical silver fox was not surprised. Instead, she was happy. She had been waiting for this moment. The rest of the golden fox tails behind the mystical silver fox instantly opened. The golden silk on the fox tail was like a dense spider web, firmly covering the immortal trapping sword. Although the sword, one of the 4 immortal killing swords, was powerful and cut off a lot of fox silk at the beginning, there were more and more golden fox silk around it. The immortal trapping sword was like an insect falling on a spider web. The more it struggled, the tighter it was. The magic treasure was psychic. Although it did not have the wisdom of human beings, it also knew that the crisis was approaching it step by step. At this time, more and more golden fox silk was entangled, and its body was almost invisible. The immortal trapping sword struggled crazily, but the mystical silver fox did not give it a chance to escape. She laughed grimly, curled her tail, and twisted all the golden fox silk. With a crisp sound, the immortal trapping sword was twisted into several pieces. All of a sudden, the immortal trapping sword no longer struggled. All the spiritual chi in its body was drained, and it fell from the air like a piece of scrap metal. 3 of the 4 immortal killing swords, which were once famous in the world, had been lost. Only the immortal trapping sword was still silently passed down in the world. However, in this battle against the mystical silver fox, the last 4 immortal killing swords were finally completely destroyed and disappeared from the world. From then on, the 4 immortal killing swords were extinct and completely became a legend, no longer existing. Zhou Chang watched helplessly as the immortal trapping sword was destroyed in front of him. His whole body trembled, and his heart ached like a knife. In an instant, he remembered that when he was still a child, his master had solemnly passed on this sword to him. At that time, the picture flashed in front of Zhou Chang's eyes like a lantern. When the last picture was fixed, it was the ferocious face of the mystical silver fox, and a white palm that was growing rapidly in front of him. With a puff sound, the mystical silver fox slapped Zhou Chang's head with her palm. In an instant his brain was smashed, and his body and soul were destroyed. The sound was not loud at all, and it was drowned out by the heavy rain around them. However, it was as if a heavy drum had been beaten in everyone's heart. All of this happened too fast, so fast that people could not see it, and could not come back to their senses. At this time, the illusion set up by the mystical silver fox slowly disappeared in midair. On the other side, Zhou Chang's body had already fallen quickly from midair, like a broken sack. From ecstasy to fear, such a roller coaster change made everyone desperate. The morale of the Japanese cultivation world had completely fallen to the bottom, and it could no longer be inspired by Ayase Shenguang and the others. The cultivators of various sects in China were also shocked and did not know what to do. After losing Zhou Chang, although there were also good cultivators among the cultivators of various sects, when there was no group of dragons and their morale was low, where should they go? Should they fight or flee? At this time, Ding Nan also stopped in midair like a walking corpse. She was so stunned that she could not come back to her senses. Her mind was buzzing with the thought, I failed? I failed. I killed Senior Zhou. Although Ding Nan's personality was extreme, she still had a kind side in her heart. When she saw such a respected senior like Zhou Chang, she naturally admired him. Moreover, Zhou Chang affirmed her in front of everyone, approved of her, and praised her, which made her have a strong affection and admiration for Zhou Chang. However, such a veteran of the Chinese cultivation world had lost his life because of his own arrogance. At this moment, Ding Nan was really regretful. She knew that in the next second, the mystical silver fox would definitely come to kill her again. And at this time, there would be no one to save her. She was dead. Ding Nan's heart was as cold as ash. She gritted her teeth and raised her hand to slap the top of her head. As soon as she moved her hand, it was suddenly held by someone. A soft voice came over. What's the matter? You have to commit suicide. At this time, Ding Nan's cultivation was also quite high. It was impossible for others to appear beside her without noticing and grab her arm so easily, even if she was extremely absent-minded. But at this time, Dingnan suddenly felt that there was someone beside her. She turned her head in shock and saw a handsome, elegant middle-aged man standing beside her. This man had an indescribable bearing. His eyes were gentle and wise, as if he could see through everything at a glance. It seemed that his cultivation was even higher than Zhou Chang's. The terrifying eyes of the mystical silver fox could make people despair and have the will to die. However, the man in front of her looked at her gently. The fear and the thought of death in Ding Nan's heart suddenly disappeared without a trace, as if the chill had been swept away by the wind. Her heart seemed to be warm, and her whole body was full of vitality and strength. Ding Nan was shocked, and a thought suddenly flashed through her mind. Who is this person? Is there such a powerful person in the world? Chapter 852. The person in front of Ding Nan was none other than Wang Yuanshan, who had arrived late. After he learned from Tachibana Wakako that the mystical silver fox had already attacked, he rushed here. He also knew that if he didn't speed up, the people on Mount Shuya would all die. At that time, he wouldn't be able to deal with the mystical silver fox alone. Almost there, even if they could deal with it, the vitality of the Chinese cultivation world would be severely damaged. For a moment, Wang Yuanshan didn't care so much. He suddenly sped up. After he left the land of China, he stepped on the floodwaters and stepped on the sea. Although he was walking on the sea, he was much faster than Tachibana Wakako and Abe, who were flying. In the beginning, Abe had the intention to compete with Wang Yuanshan, although he knew that his cultivation was far inferior to Wang Yuanshan's. But the Chinese in front of him was walking on the sea. Could it be that his flying speed was inferior to his walking speed? As a result, along the way, he followed behind Wang Yuanshan and ate dust all the way. He almost lost half of his life, but he still couldn't catch up. When they reached the ground of Japan, he sighed in amazement and was shocked in his heart. This Chinese man's cultivation is really unfathomable and terrifying. The Japanese cultivators did not build the foundation and did not cultivate their lives. Therefore, they relied on their explosive power to fight. Few people could have a strong endurance. Wang Yuanshan had already reached the Jinshan realm more than 10 years ago. During the 10 years of imprisonment, he was so bored that he could only cultivate. Otherwise, he had nothing else to do. His cultivation had long since reached an unimaginable level, far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Wang Yuanshan rushed all the way, and the speed of the lightning above his head suddenly increased. Its power was several times stronger than before. Fortunately, there were thunderstorms everywhere he went these days. The weather forecast in Japan was just like a joke. Rain all over Japan. With the cover of the thunderstorm, the heavenly lightning didn't seem too abrupt. Otherwise, in the middle of the day, where there were no clouds for tens of thousands of li, if two dense dark clouds suddenly floated over with two lightning whirlpools, who wouldn't be dumbfounded upon seeing this? Even ordinary people could find something wrong. How could the mystical silver fox not find it? Under the cover of the thunderstorm, Wang Yuanshan finally felt relieved. He quickly ran towards Su Yi. When he reached his destination, he saw a beautiful woman with a graceful figure floating in the air. Her face was full of sorrow and fear, ready to commit suicide. Without saying a word, his figure flashed, and he immediately went forward to stop him. Ding Nan's heart was filled with grief and self-reproach, and she wanted to die. She turned her head to look at Wang Yuanshan, only to see that he was travel-worn, his hair disheveled, but his eyes were sharp and clear. You almost there. When Wang Yuanshan opened his mouth, Ding Nan immediately remembered that this was the #1 expert in the world, Wang Yuanshan, who had intimidated the Xintian sect on the side peak of Mount Longhu. Seeing that the top expert in the Chinese cultivation world had finally arrived, Ding Nan's heart was lifted for no reason. She quickly told Wang Yuanshan about the situation on the field. Only then did Wang Yuanshan know that there had been a fierce battle before. The Japanese cultivation world had suffered heavy casualties, and corpses were everywhere. Zhou Chang, a veteran of the Chinese cultivation world, had died on the spot. Although there were fewer casualties in the Chinese cultivation world, Zhou Chang's death and the destruction of the immortal trapping sword had not only caused great losses to the Chuanjian dragon sect, but also caused irreparable losses to the Chinese cultivation world. Wang Yuanshan was stunned when he heard this. Then he sighed softly and said, "Senior Zhou is really a role model for our generation." Ding Nan secretly bit her lip. Her heart skipped a beat, and she seemed to have thought of something. She couldn't help but retract her hand into her sleeve. She held the Hell Wuzhang sword tightly and refused to let go. She was secretly nervous. Although she was remorseful and blamed herself in her heart, she was absolutely unwilling to use such a sinister artifact. Wang Yuanshan glanced at her, and his deep eyes seemed to see through her mind. He smiled slightly and didn't say anything. He just said softly, "There are only evil people in the world, and there are no evil powerful magical weapons. Please remember." Ding Nan's heart trembled, and she slowly relaxed. Just as she was about to speak, she saw a flash in front of her eyes. The mystical silver fox had already appeared in front of her. The 7 golden fox tails were like a golden waterfall, almost covering half of the sky. They were extremely dazzling and magnificent. Ding Nan's heart suddenly tightened. She gritted her teeth and looked at the mystical silver fox. She didn't dare to say another word, for fear that the other party would take advantage of her as soon as she opened her mouth. The shadow that the mystical silver fox had left on her before was too strong. At this time, Wang Yuanshan was known as the best in the Chinese cultivation world. He was even more famous than Li Jiandong. Although he had been a famous master for a long time, the mystical silver fox had been sealed for 900 years. How could she know who he was? The mystical silver fox saw Wang Yuanshan at a glance. She only looked at him a little and said impatiently, "Get out of the way, or I'll kill you." Wang Yuanshan smiled slightly and said, "Mystical silver fox, will you not kill me if I give way or not?" The mystical silver fox had won a series of battles. She had killed Zhou Chang and destroyed the immortal trapping sword. She was at the peak of her momentum. How could she take this unknown soldier in front of her seriously? When she saw that the other party had retorted with a light sentence, she was immediately furious. A golden fox tail behind her swung fiercely, like a spear or a halberd, and stabbed at Wang Yuanshan. At this time, Tachibana Wakako and Abe arrived. The two of them knew that Wang Yuanshan was powerful, but they didn't know how powerful he was. Especially as Japanese, they were very clear about the level of most of the cultivators who had died in the battle in the Japanese cultivation world. In front of the mystical silver fox and her 7 golden fox tails, these people had no power to fight back and were at the mercy of others. At this time, Wang Yuanshan finally met the mystical silver fox, which immediately made them so nervous that they cried out loudly. One of them blurted out in Japanese, and the other blurted out in Chinese, "Be careful." Seeing that the mystical silver fox was coming at him aggressively, Wang Yuanshan was not in a hurry. He put his palms in front of him, as if they were sealed. In an instant, a visible yin-yang 8 trigrams appeared in front of him. As soon as he crossed his palms, the yin-yang 8 trigrams slowly began to circulate. Although it looked heavy and slow, it was extremely powerful. The mystical silver fox's golden fox tail suddenly hit the 8 trigrams, and the surrounding air suddenly shook. After the 8 trigrams rippled for a while, a huge force bounced back, shaking the invincible golden fox tail of the mystical silver fox back. The mystical silver fox was shocked. Then she looked at Wang Yuanshan seriously and shouted with sharp eyes, "Who are you?" When Wang Yuanshan separated his hands again, the yin-yang 8 trigrams in front of him suddenly disappeared. He smiled and said, "Jingyi School Linggong Sect Wang Yuanshan." In the Song, Yuan, Ming and Qing dynasties, Jingyi School was an earth-shattering sect of cultivation. It was the leader of Taoism in the Chinese cultivation world. However, the mystical silver fox was from the Tang dynasty and was driven to Japan during the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period. The Jingyi school was originally called the 5 Pecks of Rice sect. Later, it was changed to the Celestial Master Taoism during the Wei, Jin, and Northern and Southern dynasties. After the Sui and Tang dynasties, it was not called the Jingyi school, It was not until the mystical silver fox fled from China that the Jingyi school was called the Dragon Tiger sect. The mystical silver fox then lurked around the emperor of the bird feather in Japan for a period of time. This period corresponded to the period of Emperor Huizong of the Song dynasty. At this time, Zhang Jixian, the 30th generation celestial master of the Jingyi school, was very favored by Emperor Huizong of the Song dynasty. As a result, the Shangqing Temple of the ancestral court of Mount Longhu was upgraded to the Shangqing Jingyi Palace. Since then, the Jianghu and political status of the Jingyi school had reached the peak. From then on, the name of the Dragon Tiger sect was no longer mentioned. The world only knew the Jingyi school, and few people mentioned the Celestial Master Taoism and the Dragon Tiger sect. Therefore, it could be said that in the Song dynasty, the name of the Jingyi school slowly spread. Although the mystical silver fox was also a knowledgeable cultivator, when she fled to Japan, what happened to China? How could she, a person who lived deep in the inner palace, know? If it was the 5 pecks of rice sect, the Celestial Master Taoism, and the Dragon Tiger sect, then she naturally knew them. Moreover, in the Tang dynasty, politics, culture, religion, and economy had all flourished to a peak. At this time, the Tang dynasty had all kinds of rivers running into the sea, and all kinds of sects were flourishing. At this time, the Dragon Tiger sect was far from reaching the point of unifying the world. It could only be regarded as a relatively famous sect in the cultivation world, far less famous than in the Song, Yuan, and Ming dynasties. The mystical silver fox was a bit like the Taoyuan people in the peach blossom origin. She didn't know about the Han dynasty, but about the Wei and Jin dynasties. She didn't even know about the Jingyi school, let alone the Linggong sect. Moreover, although Wang Yuanshan had been famous for a long time, the mystical silver fox had been sealed for 900 years. After her memory was completely awakened, she had been thinking about taking revenge on the cultivation world of China and Japan. How could she care about the current situation of the cultivation world, let alone Wang Yuanshan? Therefore, Wang Yuanshan's name was deafening to others. Many cultivators in the distance heard Wang Yuanshan's voice from afar, but as soon as he opened his mouth, his voice was calm and elegant, as if he was standing in front of them and speaking softly. They all looked serious. Even if they didn't know Wang Yuanshan's name, they knew that this person must be a great master. Those who knew of his name exclaimed softly, "Ah, that's China's #1 expert." Before, Zhou Chang and his immortal trapping sword had already shocked the cultivators of all sects in Japan. At this time, in the face of danger, no one dared to look down on the Chinese cultivators. At this time, when they heard the title of the #1 master in China, they immediately became respectful and looked at Wang Yuanshan with a strange look. At this time, the mystical silver fox saw him say 3 short sentences. 9 words, but she didn't know any of them. What was the Jingyi school? I don't know. What was the Linggong sect? I've never heard of it. Who was Wang Yuanshan? Who knew? Wang Yuanshan was so famous, but in the eyes of the mystical silver fox, he was just a nobody. The mystical silver fox couldn't help but look down on him. However, Wang Yuanshan blocked her attack with his bare hands, which made her pay attention to Wang Yuanshan. The mystical silver fox sneered and said, "It seems that I have been sleeping for 900 years. There are really talented people in every generation." The mystical silver fox had a disease. She was a beauty at the level of a disaster, so she had a very high standard. She liked handsome men very much, and she preferred beautiful men with outstanding temperament. In the past, Huifa could make her fall in love with him, not only because he had saved her life, but also because Huifa was handsome and had an extraordinary bearing. Although she was full of killing at this time, and was full of hostility, as the saying goes, it is easy to change mountains and rivers. In the past, the cultivators of various sects in Japan, such as Yoshida Shinmura, Ryuichi Yamazaki, and Masao Yoshikawa, were all strange uncles and strange uncles. Not only were they ugly and strange, but they were also dressed strangely. Although Ayase Shinlight, Kaisai Hikarioni, and the others did not look like them, they could not be associated with the word handsome and beautiful, even if they had plastic surgery 800 times. The mystical silver fox hated the cultivators of various sects in Japan to the bone. When she saw these guys who were not beautiful, she naturally killed them. Zhou Cheng was old and shrewd, so he was not a handsome guy. He was killed by the mystical silver fox on the spot, without saying a word. But at this time, although Wang Yuanshan was also old, he looked quite young. He was only about 30 or 40 years old, which was the golden age of a man's most attractive. He could be called an old man is called a saint. Wang Yuanshan was not only handsome, but also had an ethereal and elegant aura. Anyone who saw him would have a good impression of him. The mystical silver fox saw that there was no murderous aura around him, and his appearance was far different from that of the others before. It would be outrageous for her to have a good impression of Wang Yuanshan. But the situation in front of her was like a man who was killing crazily, and suddenly saw a beautiful woman appear in front of him. His first reaction must be to be stunned for a moment, instead of immediately brandishing his knife to cut her. As the saying goes, everyone loves beauty. Although the mystical silver fox was still angry in her heart, her killing intent had inevitably weakened a lot. Wang Yuanshan saw her change, and was not ready to expose her contempt. He said with a smile, "Mystical silver fox, I see that you are bare-handed, and I am also bare-handed. You don't have a powerful magical weapon on you, and I don't have a powerful magical weapon with me. Why don't we have a fair fight?" When the mystical silver fox heard this, she was very surprised. She had always been fighting with a group of people alone since she became famous. She had almost never encountered a situation where she fought alone. It was not that she didn't want to, but that her opponents didn't dare to. The mystical silver fox was surprised. She couldn't help but raise her head and laugh. "Well, in the past 1,000 years, you are the first person who dares to fight with me alone. For this reason, I will let you win. You can draw the Tao." Wang Yuanshan smiled slightly. He knew that the mystical silver fox had fallen into the trap, and his plan had succeeded more than half. Chapter 853. Wang Yuanshan was carefully selected by Zhang Tianshi to deal with the future calamity. Zhang Tianshi had high expectations of him, so Wang Yuanshan didn't care about him at all. Soon more than a decade ago, they had been actively dealing with the resurrection of the mystical silver fox. At that time, Wang Yuanshan, Zhang Tianshi, and the others had begun to design a layout for the mystical silver fox. According to the absolutely secret information handed down by some sects, Wang Yuanshan knew that the mystical silver fox was arrogant and conceited. She looked down on the world, and looked down on everyone. When she thought she was safe, she was easily influenced. Therefore, as soon as Wang Yuanshan mentioned a one-on-one fight with her, the mystical silver fox fell into the trap. In the eyes of the mystical silver fox, in the face of absolute strength, all schemes and tricks were illusory. As long as she struck with thunder, any little person's thoughts and tricks would be crushed into powder by her. However, the mystical silver fox had never expected that Wang Yuanshan would use herself as bait and sacrifice herself to attract the 9-heaven divine night thunder to deal with herself. The mystical silver fox had been betrayed one after another in those years. After her emotional change, she was extremely partial to the idea that all the people in the world were self-made, and it was impossible for them to sacrifice themselves for another person. Therefore, she put herself in others' shoes. How could she think that there were cultivators in the world who were willing to sacrifice themselves to get rid of her? The low-level cultivators were willing to sacrifice themselves, but they couldn't pose a threat to her. However, the higher the cultivation level, the more they cherished their lives. Who would be willing to risk their lives for those who were about to become immortals and gods? Therefore, the mystical silver fox boldly accepted Wang Yuanshan's challenge. She wanted to see how strong this man, who looked very pleasing to the eye, was. Wang Yuanshan smiled slightly and said the rules of the fight. "Mystical silver fox, since you let me win, I won't stand on ceremony. The two of us are fighting here, and all the cultivators in the cultivation world in China are witnesses. We'll draw a prison. Whoever gets out of this range first will be the loser. What do you think?" The mystical silver fox was stunned for a moment, but soon became alert again. She was a fox, suspicious and worried. She immediately sneered and said, "Don't use Sunbin's trick to fool me. Do you want to lie to me?" In the past, Gui Guzi accepted 2 students. One was Sunbin, and the other was Pang Wan. In order to test their abilities, Gui Guzi said to them, "Whoever can make me walk out of this room wins." In order to trick Sunbin into leaving, Pang Wan resorted to all sorts of lies and tricks. But Sunbin replied in fear and trepidation, "Teacher, you're extraordinarily intelligent, so I definitely won't be able to trick you into leaving. But if you do leave, I definitely have a way to make you come back willingly." Almost there, Gui Guzi didn't believe it, and immediately walked out. Sunbin clapped his hands and laughed, "Teacher, you've come out." As soon as Wang Yuanshan said this, the mystical silver fox immediately thought of this. Sometimes fighting was not only about magical power, but also about wisdom and trickery. The mystical silver fox was too powerful, so sometimes she only needed to slap her palm forward, and all the intrigues would be bullshit. Therefore, she rarely thought about these intrigues. But this did not mean that she did not understand, nor did it mean that she was stupid. The mystical silver fox knew that if the other party wanted to defeat her, there must be a trick. Otherwise, it would be extremely difficult to win, so she became vigilant. At this time, Wang Yuanshan laughed and said, "Mystical silver fox, you look down on me too much. Do I, Wang Yuanshan, need to use such a child's trick to deal with you?" When the mystical silver fox heard this, she laughed angrily and said, "Well, it's true that there are talented people in every generation. How arrogant you are. Even the reincarnated Wisdom King didn't dare to say such words in front of me. How dare you say such big words?" Wang Yuanshan smiled slightly and said, "Why? You'll know in a moment." As he said this, he pointed with his finger and said, "How about we use the mountains as the boundary?" The mystical silver fox looked around and saw that the surrounding mountains formed an arc in the distance, with her and Wang Yuanshan as the center, protecting them in the middle. For cultivators of their level, this range was not very large, but it was definitely not small. Seeing that Wang Yuanshan was going to fight with her seriously, the mystical silver fox muttered to herself, "Does he really want to fight with me alone?" She had always been used to fighting with many enemies. Suddenly, she met someone who dared to fight with her alone. She couldn't believe it and was not used to it. However, the mystical silver fox was conceited after all. After thinking for a while, she shouted resolutely, "Okay, I'd like to see what you can do." When Wang Yuanshan saw that she had agreed, even though he was so calm and composed, he couldn't help but feel his heart beating wildly, as if there was thunder rolling in his heart. However, he was a strange man with a calm face. Although he was excited in his heart, he couldn't show it on his face at all. He turned around and smiled at Ding Nan with a pleasant expression. He said, "Can you stay aside for a while?" With his strength, status, and seniority, he could completely order Ding Nan around. There was no need to be polite at all. At this time, Ding Nan was a little flattered and said in fear, "Senior Wang Yuanshan. You? Are you sure?" Wang Yuanshan smiled and said, "A man should do something and not do something in his life. How can you not do something that you have to do just because you are not sure?" Ding Nan immediately became solemn. She lowered her head to accept the lesson and quickly left. She was there. At this time, when she landed on the top of the mountain where the Chinese cultivation world was located, everyone looked at her strangely for a moment. They unconsciously stayed away from her and isolated her. Ding Nan knew that these people treated her like this. First, it could be said that Zhou Chang had died to save her. And second, it was because she had such a sinister and vicious magic weapon as the Hell Wuzhong hook in her hand. Who wouldn't be afraid of such a powerful magic weapon in her hands? These cultivators were all afraid that Ding Nan would know their names. If she shouted, they would be dead. If it weren't for the fact that the mystical silver fox was in front of them, these cultivators of the cultivation sects would have attacked her together. They would kill Ding Nan first and destroy this vicious magic weapon. The cultivators of the Yinyang sect of Mount Wuhua also stood beside Ding Nan consciously. They looked at Ding Nan's face with fear and didn't shout anymore. Although Ding Nan saw that the eyes around her were strange, her expression was indifferent. She was still indifferent, but her fingers were clenched into fists, and her nails were deeply pinched into her robes. On the other side of the mountain ridge, the cultivators of various sects in Japan were so nervous that they couldn't breathe when they saw Wang Yuanshan and the mystical silver fox confronting each other in midair. At first, they saw the two of them looking at each other without moving. While they were secretly speculating and whispering, the 7 fox tails behind the mystical silver fox suddenly burst out, like 7 steel whips, and fiercely attacked Wang Yuanshan. Wang Yuanshan had passed all his powerful magic weapons to Ao Wushuang and Zi Yuan. He was alone and only fought with his hands. He pushed his hands forward. As if he was doing Tai Chi, there was a visible yin-yang 8 trigrams wall in front of him. Every time, he could remove the fierce force of the 7 tails of the mystical silver fox. Everyone looked from a distance on the top of the mountain and saw that there was a series of muffled rumbling sounds between Wang Yuanshan and the mystical silver fox. The golden fox tail and the silver 8 trigrams wall collided with each other from time to time, shaking the air from time to time with layers of ripples and halos. For a moment, the top of Suyez Mountain was full of colorful lights, and it was very beautiful. The cultivators of various sects in China and Japan, on both sides of the mountains, saw that Wang Yuanshan was able to fight against the mystical silver fox with his own strength, without being at a disadvantage. They were shocked in their hearts and also shocked. There is such a master in the Chinese cultivation world. It's really terrible. Some Japanese cultivators who had been to Mount Longhu before were even more puzzled. If Wang Yuanshan had appeared at the beginning, how could they have been so rampant on Mount Longhu? But why didn't he show up before? These Japanese people were puzzled. Ayase Chuyin and Ayase Shengguang looked at each other and felt strange. They also noticed that something was wrong. The mystical silver fox, who had personally experienced Wang Yuanshan's strength, was even more puzzled. Although the mystical silver fox seemed to be tied with Wang Yuanshan at this time. In fact, she knew that Wang Yuanshan's strength was still a distance away from hers. Moreover, she had only used less than 70% of her strength, and kept 30% of her strength. Therefore, at this time, he could barely resist. If she went all out, she was afraid that Wang Yuanshan would be defeated soon. Therefore, no matter from which aspect, the mystical silver fox felt that Wang Yuanshan was bound to lose. But why did this guy look fearless? The mystical silver fox vaguely felt that something was wrong. At this time, Wang Yuanshan was activating his Jinqi with all his might. With his strong Jinqi and spiritual power, he resisted the fierce attack of the mystical silver fox. Seeing his calm appearance, the cultivators around him were greatly encouraged. The originally low morale showed signs of rising. She was furious in her heart and suddenly increased her strength. The 7 golden tails suddenly became incomparably huge and smashed towards Wang Yuanshan. At this time, Wang Yuanshan did not dodge at all. He held his hands above his head and forcibly resisted the attack. With a loud bang, the mystical silver fox smashed the 8 diagrams yin-yang wall into pieces. Although it hit Wang Yuanshan, everyone's heart skipped a beat. They were afraid that when the mystical silver fox moved its tail away, Wang Yuanshan would have been turned into a ball of flesh paste. But when they took a closer look, they saw that Wang Yuanshan was motionless in the air. They couldn't help shouting loudly. It seemed that at this moment, they finally saw the hope of dealing with the mystical silver fox. Finally, there was someone who could defeat the mystical silver fox. But in fact, Wang Yuanshan knew that he was suffering. He was hit by the mystical silver fox's fierce attack. Suddenly, all the blood in his body surged, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. After he forced himself to swallow the blood in his mouth, he wiped it with both hands, and the 8 diagrams yin-yang wall in front of him reappeared. The mystical silver fox was shocked. She knew that Wang Yuanshan would be injured this time, but what made her feel strange was that this person had been using the 8 diagrams yin-yang diagram to deal with her. This move was the purest defensive move, without any attack power. Didn't he want to win? Or did he have other plans? The doubts in the mystical silver fox's heart had been tangled. At this time, she became more and more suspicious. She couldn't help looking around. Seeing her like this, Wang Yuanshan knew that the mystical silver fox had become suspicious. His heart trembled, and he subconsciously wanted to look up at the sky to see where the thundercloud from Mount Longhu had gone. But he knew that he couldn't look up at this time, or he would definitely be discovered by the mystical silver fox. However, Wang Yuanshan could bear it, but it didn't mean that Tachibana Wakako and Abe could. Although Wang Yuanshan didn't tell them about the absolute love-extinguishing array, the two of them were also cultivators, and they were not fools or idiots. Along the way for the past 2 days, they had seen 2 rolling thundercloud vortexes behind them. How could they not understand this? Therefore, when the two of them saw that Wang Yuanshan was a little weak, they looked up at the sky anxiously. The mystical silver fox immediately found a clue, and also looked up at the sky. Ordinary people looked up, and saw that the sky was covered with dark clouds at this time. The world was dark, and there seemed to be nothing unusual. However, the pupils of the mystical silver fox suddenly shrank, and then her face was full of killing intent. She said sternly, "How dare you lie to me?" When Wang Yuanshan saw this, he immediately left his body with Yang's spirit. A visible white chi rushed into the sky from his body, like a straight smoke signal. In this kind of thunderstorm, when the Yang spirit came out of his body and rushed to the sky with his spiritual power, it would attract the heavenly thunder. Wang Yuanshan's action was equivalent to increasing the speed of the arrival of the thundercloud. In an instant, 2 huge vortexes appeared in the thick dark clouds. The vortexes were full of dense thunder and lightning. There were so many of them and so powerful that the mystical silver fox couldn't help but be shocked when she saw them from afar. Chapter 854. The mystical silver fox suddenly saw so many rolling thunder in the sky. Her heart was shocked, and she was shocked. You almost there, although she could defend against most spells and magic treasures, there were exceptions to everything. Among spells, heavenly thunder was the most powerful, and among heavenly thunder, the 9 heavens heavenly thunder posed the greatest threat to her. Her cultivation had reached the pinnacle of perfection. Heavenly thunder alone was not enough to completely destroy her, but could only split her soul and divine senses. However, over time, the scattered soul and divine senses of the mystical silver fox could still reassemble and reform. This was the supreme realm of immortality, coexisting with heaven and earth, and shining with the sun and the moon. However, the mystical silver fox was not absolutely invincible. Although ordinary heavenly thunder was lethal to her, it was not enough to kill her. Only the 9 heaven divine night thunder could completely refine her soul and divine sense, and there was no possibility of her resurrection. Therefore, the mystical silver fox was the most sensitive to the 9 heavens divine night thunder. As soon as she saw the 9 heavens divine night thunder, the mystical silver fox had the intention to leave. Even though her good impression of Wang Yuanshan had completely disappeared at this moment, and she wanted to kill him as soon as possible, the mystical silver fox gritted her teeth and looked at Wang Yuanshan. She was so angry that she couldn't wait to tear him into pieces. She suddenly thought of the few men she had met. The first one, Huifa, was the object of her admiration. Although they had a sexual relationship, he treated her seriously. The second one was the reincarnated Wisdom King. Although he had asked her about her well-being, it was hypocritical. The third one in front of her, Wang Yuanshan, whom she had a little affection for, had actually planned to deal with her in order to completely destroy her. The mystical silver fox really wanted to poke a hole in the sky, tear a hole in the earth, and pull out all the gods in the sky and the earth. She roared at them angrily. "What did I do wrong? Do you want to do this to me?" The blood-red eyes of the mystical silver fox almost seemed to be burning with anger. Her eyes flickered, and her voice was filled with resentment. "Good. Wang Yuanshan, you can actually attract the 9 heaven god night thunder. I'm looking at you. For you to be able to cultivate to such a realm, you're a rare genius that only appears once in 100 years. Could it be that you're willing to throw your life away like this?" Wang Yuanshan smiled faintly. Thunder rumbled above his head. The lightning grew brighter and brighter, and the accumulated power of the thunder grew stronger. However, his expression was indescribably free and easy. Let go, let go. Only with sacrifice can there be gains. The mystical silver fox shouted angrily. What did you get? The reputation of subduing demons and devils? Is fame really that important to a cultivator like you? Wang Yuanshan smiled and said, Do I have to obtain it myself for it to be counted as obtaining it? The mystical silver fox was even angrier. Are you doing this for the men sect? For what so-called righteous path? You righteous people are the most shameless, despicable people in the world. You just can't bear to see a variant demon stronger than you. So you can't bear to see a demon like me living in this world. Wang Yuanshan didn't argue with her. He just looked at her calmly and said with a gentle smile, Mystical silver fox, you don't understand. The mystical silver fox knew that she should immediately escape from this place and stay far away from the heavenly thunder. However, she felt as if there was a bone stuck in her throat, which made her extremely uncomfortable. If she didn't ask clearly, she wouldn't be reconciled even if she died. Soon, the mystical silver fox said angrily, I don't understand. I've lived more than 900 years longer than you. Don't I understand? Wang Yuanshan chuckled, and his eyes became extremely gentle in an instant. He looked at the mystical silver fox with some sympathy. Some people have lived for a lifetime, but they don't understand anything. But some people have lived for a few days, but because they met a different person, they understand everything. The mystical silver fox's heart suddenly moved. She suddenly widened her eyes and cried out in disbelief. Woman? Are you doing this for a woman? Wang Yuanshan smiled, but didn't say anything. He just looked at the mystical silver fox quietly, and his chi was always locked on the mystical silver fox. The mystical silver fox couldn't help laughing, as if she had heard the funniest joke in the world. Her life was full of ups and downs. She fell in love with two men. One of them sneered at her, and the other betrayed her and tried to kill her. This made her despair of love long ago. She didn't believe that there were people in the world who were willing to sacrifice themselves for love. The mystical silver fox sneered loudly and said, Stop joking. How is that possible? Wang Yuanshan didn't argue with her. In his opinion, even if his body and soul were destroyed, it was enough for Ao Wushuang to survive in the end. It didn't matter whether he was understood or not. Wang Yuanshan smiled faintly and looked at the mystical silver fox calmly and quietly. Although this kind of gaze did not have the slightest sense of aggression and power, the mystical silver fox was creeped out, because she saw a terrible will to die in this gaze. This man had made up his mind to die with her. The mystical silver fox finally couldn't stand it anymore. She shouted, Do you think you can kill me like this? Stop dreaming. After that, the mystical silver fox's figure flashed in an instant, and she wanted to escape. But as soon as she moved, Wang Yuanshan appeared in her way. The mystical silver fox was suddenly shocked. How can he keep up with my speed? But when she looked to the side, she saw that there were Wang Yuanshan's young spirit clones everywhere. They were so dense that they covered the mountains and the fields, covering the sky and the earth. The mystical silver fox's heart sank. She knew that Wang Yuanshan was risking his life. He didn't hesitate to cover the surroundings with his young spirit clones, in an attempt to slow her down. As long as she was entangled with one of them, he could immediately catch up with her. At this time, the cultivators of the various sects in the Middle Sun had all seen the clues. One by one, they released their best and proudest magic arts and magic treasures crazily, and once again bombarded the mystical silver fox with overwhelming force. The mystical silver fox's fox tail curled at a clone in front of her, and she quickly rushed forward. However, her speed was delayed by Wang Yuanshan. In the blink of an eye, Wang Yuanshan had entangled himself. He even seemed to be unable to see the crazy magic arts and magic treasures around him. He entangled the mystical silver fox tightly. Wherever she went he would be. The mystical silver fox was shocked and angry. She didn't care about the magic arts and magic treasures around her. Her 6 golden fox tails were enough to resist them. However, she looked at the sky in horror from time to time. She saw that the thunderclouds above her head were rolling faster and faster, and the vortex in the middle was getting longer and longer. It was obvious that the thunder would fall at any time. At this critical moment of life and death, the mystical silver fox rushed out like crazy, but Wang Yuanshan was also desperately blocking her. The cultivators around also knew whether they were alive or dead. At this moment, they all clenched their teeth, overdrew their spiritual energy and jinqi, and blasted at the mystical silver fox. In an instant, Suyi felt as though he had been bombarded by a terrifying cannon. The sky rumbled, as though it was an exploding cauldron, filled with all sorts of colors. At this critical moment of life and death, the mystical silver fox burst out with extremely terrifying power. Her 6 fox tails were like a barrier, not only blocking almost all the magic treasures and magic arts, but also bouncing back many magic treasures and magic arts, killing many cultivators in the middle sun. Her remaining golden fox tail quickly swept away the other young spirit doppelgangers of Wang Yuanshan. In the blink of an eye, she had smashed no less than 100 young spirit doppelgangers. Especially when she saw Wang Yuanshan's real body at a glance, she immediately waved her hand like lightning and stabbed at Wang Yuanshan's chest in an instant. At this time, if Wang Yuanshan dodged, she could immediately open a bloody path and escape far away. But as the saying goes, the soft are afraid of the fierce are afraid of the stupid, and the stupid are afraid of not wanting to die. However, Wang Yuanshan didn't even dodge. He pounced on the mystical silver fox's hand, as if he was begging for death. With a puff sound, Wang Yuanshan was immediately pierced by the mystical silver fox's hand. The mystical silver fox laughed angrily and said, "Are you courting death? Good. I'd like to see how you can stop me now." Wang Yuanshan had long been an arrow at the end of its flight. There was blood at the corner of his mouth. He forced a smile and said, "I don't need it anymore." The mystical silver fox was stunned, and then she looked up. She was suddenly shocked to see that the sky was shining brightly in an instant, and countless heavenly thunder struck down at her location. At this moment, the sky seemed to collapse, and the earth seemed to shatter. The huge explosion of heavenly thunder covered all the noise between heaven and earth, and the extreme light made everyone blind. The figures of the mystical silver fox and Wang Yuanshan disappeared in this amazing light and heavenly thunder in an instant. In the distant Mount Longhu, on the side peak of Mount Longhu of the Jingyi school, the disciples of the Jingyi school, who were guarding the absolute love extinguishing formation, looked up at the sky nervously. At this time, on this side peak, a beam of 5-colored divine light shot straight into the sky from the top of the mountain. The thunderclouds that the beam of light penetrated were rolling around like booms. From a distance it looked magnificent. Zhang Tianhe and the other disciples of the Jingyi school in the magic formation all knew that at this time, the absolute love extinguishing formation must have been activated, and the 9-heaven divine night thunder would immediately fall. Whether they could kill the mystical silver fox or not depended on this moment. Because the magic formation had been activated, Zhang Tianhe and the others relaxed their vigilance a little, especially when they saw such a strange scene in front of them. It was not something they could see at any time. At this time, they were all looking up at the rare scene in front of them with extreme nervousness. For a moment they didn't dare to breathe. As Zhang Tianhe looked at the rolling thunderclouds, he sighed in his heart. What is hard to resist the power of heaven? This is hard to resist the power of heaven. No matter how powerful the mystical silver fox is, she will die under the heavenly thunder. While he was thinking, he suddenly saw a little junior brother in the magic formation, walking in the direction of the stone cave from the corner of his eye. Zhang Tianhe recognized at a glance that this was the little junior brother, who had said that he was in a hurry. He had been gone for a long time, but now he came back. He couldn't help asking casually, "Junior brother Ziyang, have you been gone for a long time?" Junior brother Ziyang forced a smile and didn't say anything. Zhang Tianhe didn't think too much about it. He raised his head and continued to look at the sky. But as soon as he raised his head, he saw out of the corner of his eye that junior brother continued to walk towards the stone cave. Zhang Tianhe was stunned and asked curiously, "Junior brother Ziyang, what are you doing there?" His shout was unintentional, but junior brother Ziyang's footsteps slowed down for a moment before he sped up and walked further inside. Zhang Tianhe was immediately very vigilant. He said sternly, "Junior brother Ziyang, stop. I'm talking to you." As he said this, he quickly walked towards him and patted him on the shoulder with one hand. At this time, junior brother Zi Yang's body suddenly twisted and immediately turned into a white seven-tailed divine fox. It was Ao Wushuang. Ao Wushuang flicked her fox tail and instantly rushed towards Zhang Tianhe and Initiji. Zhang Tianhe's figure suddenly stopped. He immediately shouted sternly, "How dare you? Do you want to die? Disciples of the Jingyi sect, kill the evildoer. Everyone in your position, happy Mid-Autumn Festival." Tang Tang made a reunion salute and wished everyone a happy ending. Haha. Chapter 855. Since Ao Wushuang had failed to assassinate Ao Wushuang, she had quietly left alone. She no longer thought about the impossible task of assassinating Ao Wushuang. After quietly recuperating for a few days, she quietly came to Mount Longhu again and lurked beside the side peak where Wang Yuanshan had been. Soon, although the absolute love destroyer formation was constantly absorbing her spiritual energy and junqi, Ao Wushuang seemed to be unaware of it. She just waited patiently by the side, waiting for the disciples of the Jingyi school, who were guarding the formation, to make a mistake. As the saying goes, everyone can make mistakes if they are not saints. No matter how powerful a cultivator was, he would still make mistakes. After waiting patiently for a few days, Ao Wushuang finally met a young disciple who had gone out alone. She immediately made her move. While Zhang Tianhe and the others were focused on the absolute love destroyer formation, she cast illusions around her. She wanted to sneak into the formation and find an opportunity to destroy it. Although she knew that she didn't have a powerful magic weapon, nor did she have the 5 magic swords that were enough to destroy the formation, Ao Wushuang knew that as long as the formation moved at this time, the general power of the formation would gather from the ground to the sky. As long as she could stop the power of the formation from gathering in the sky, she could also disturb the operation of the formation. However, Ao Wushuang didn't know whether she could stop the absolute love destroyer formation by doing this. She was like a person who had grasped at a life-saving straw. Even if there was only a little hope, she would try her best. She rushed toward the formation stone tunnel like crazy. Zhang Tianhe and the others were furious when they saw that Ao Wushuang dared to break into the hinterland of the Jingyi school alone. The disciples of the Jingyi school who were holding the formation shouted in unison, and the long swords on their backs suddenly jumped out. In an instant, the 7-star formation exploded, and the sword light shot in all directions. Although there was one person missing, the power of the formation controlled by Zhang Tianhe was still amazing. Although Ao Wushuang also had 7 fox tails, she didn't have the ability of the mystical silver fox. In the face of this powerful formation, Ao Wushuang's way was suddenly covered with sword light, and the crisscrossing sword chi made her shudder. These disciples of the Jingyi school could easily kill them in a one-on-one fight, but when they joined forces to form a formation, the power was earth-shattering, which frightened her. Ao Wushuang saw the sword chi in front of her. If she took another step forward, she might be cut into countless pieces. She looked up, gritted her teeth, and then sprinted madly up the mountain. Zhang Tianhe was shocked and shouted, "Stop her!" At this time, the power of the 7-star formation was fully displayed. If the Xian Tian sect's Grand Destruction formation encountered such a situation, they could only watch helplessly. Although the Grand Destruction formation was powerful, it could not be moved. On the other hand, the 7-star formation could attack and defend freely. The disciples of the Jingyi school immediately jumped up and followed Ao Wushuang. Ao Wushuang moved extremely fast. Her eyes were fixed on the ray of divine light on the top of the mountain. Her figure was as fast as lightning, and she quickly approached. When the disciples of the Jingyi school saw that they were getting further and further away from Ao Wushuang, they couldn't help but be furious. They all released their powerful magical weapons and long swords, ready to intercept and kill her halfway. Clang, clang, clang. With a crisp sound, a row of sharp swords suddenly appeared in front of Ao Wushuang. They stared at her as if they had set up an inescapable net, waiting for her to break through. At this time, there was a sword formation in front of Ao Wushuang, and there were pursuers behind her. There was really no way out. She made up her mind and roared, ready to rely on her fox spirit's real body to break through. Seeing that she was so crazy, Zhang Tianhe sneered in his heart and shouted, "You're courting death." As he spoke, he was about to use the sword formation to shred the bold fox spirit. However, just as Ao Wushuang was about to come into contact with the sword formation, a huge horsetail whisk suddenly flew over from the sky and swept toward Ao Wushuang. This attack came without warning and contained a great force. Although Ao Wushuang was a seven-tailed fox spirit, she had no way to fight back. With a loud bang, Ao Wushuang was immediately sent flying backward by the chop and fell to the ground. Seeing that Ao Wushuang was about to die here, a faint voice sounded in everyone's ears, "Don't hurt her." Zhang Tianhe and the others had an idea, and the long swords immediately tilted and stabbed into the side of Ao Wushuang with a clanging sound. In an instant, an iron cage made of long swords was formed around her. At this time, Ao Wushuang turned over and rushed wildly toward the sword cage around her. But at this time, the sword formation was closed, so how could she break through it? After trying a few times, Ao Wushuang saw that the sword cage didn't move at all. She roared, "If you have the ability, do it openly. What's the use of sneak attacks?" A young disciple of the Jingyi school shouted, "How dare you? Do you think you're qualified to fight with our leader?" At this time, Zhang Tianhe and the others all turned over and bowed in the direction of the main peak of the Jingyi school. They said, "Greetings, leader. How should we deal with this matter?" Ao Wushuang was shocked. The one who attacked just now was Zhang Tianshi? Why did Zhang Tianshi personally deal with me? The Japanese cultivation sect had attacked Mount Longhu, and the Xintian sect had tried to seize power. Zhang Tianshi had always been sitting on the fishing platform, as if he didn't care about the affairs of the world. But at this time, he had personally come to deal with her? Ao Wushuang was in despair in an instant. She knew what the words Zhang Tianshi meant in the Chinese cultivation world. It meant that the patriarch of the oldest family in the Chinese cultivation world, which had been passed down for nearly 2,000 years, had his eyes on her. Although Wang Yuanshan was a little more powerful than Zhang Tianshi, the power that Zhang Tianshi could mobilize was far from what Wang Yuanshan could compare with. Behind Zhang Tianshi, there was not only a huge cultivation family of Zhang in the south and Kong in the north, but also a huge sect of the Chinese cultivation world supporting him. Therefore, although Wang Yuanshan was known as the number one in the world, he had still been captured alive by Zhang Tianshi. If such a person wanted to deal with Ao Wushuang, there would be no chance of winning unless Ao Wushuang became the mystical silver fox. In despair, Ao Wushuang couldn't help but roar, "Zhang Tianshi, are you so cold-blooded and cruel? Do you want to watch Wang Yuanshan die in person? Decent people like you are dignified, but in fact your thoughts are dirty and your means are despicable. Aren't you ashamed?" However, no matter how Ao Wushuang cursed, Zhang Tianshi did not respond. It seemed that he was just silently watching the movement of the absolute love destroyer formation. Just as Ao Wushuang was cursing, the light gathered on the top of the side peak of the formation became brighter and brighter. When it was about to reach the apex, something unexpected happened. At this time, if someone were to look carefully in the stone cave of the formation, they would find that the runes in this huge stone cave had become incredibly bright. Each line seemed to be a groove that could transport wandering spiritual power and energy. They transported countless energy to the center of the formation and kept the spiritual power and jinqi flowing fast. However, a gap had appeared in a small hole that Li Sun had accidentally pierced with the seven-star sword. At first, the gap was not obvious. It was like a tire on a slowly moving sports car had become loose, and the negative effect was not very obvious. However, as the speed of the sports car increased, the kinetic energy generated gradually increased. Gradually, the tire became more and more loose, and it began to shake violently. At an extremely high speed, the slightest shake could cause the car to crash and people to die. This was already the case when driving a car, let alone an extremely dense and complicated formation. This crack slowly grew larger and larger, gradually spreading throughout the entire rune groove. Finally, when the array formation revolved to the highest point and gathered the greatest amount of energy, this crack completely broke apart into a massive hole. Magic power in true essence instantly crazily gushed out from this hole. The powerful energy that had been congregated in the formation was instantly condensed into a ball. With a loud bang, it was as if an atomic bomb had exploded inside the side peak of Mount Longhu. Suddenly, the ground of Mount Longhu was shaken like a carpet that had been shaken by someone. The forest trembled, and the heaven and earth shook. Ao Wushuang, who had been lying on the ground, was almost shaken into the air. The expressions of Zhang Tianhe and the others changed drastically, and they all looked in the direction of the side peak with pale faces. At this time, the side peak had been shrouded in a thick cloud of smoke and dust. The original formation stone tunnel had completely collapsed, and the towering pillar of light had disappeared in an instant. The vortex of thunderclouds that had been rolling in the sky had also scattered in all directions. The absolute love extinguishing formation, which had been prepared for 10 years, had failed at the last moment. Ao Wushuang was stunned for a moment, and then she was ecstatic. She wanted to raise her head and laugh, but she found that there seemed to be something choking in her chest. Her heart was boiling, and her eyes were red and hot. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Meanwhile, Zhang Tianhe and the others were already stunned. They couldn't understand why the array formation would suddenly collapse. After this loud noise, the world suddenly fell silent. After a long time, a sigh slowly came from the thunderclouds. When Zhang Tianhe heard this voice, his whole body shook. He immediately knelt down and said sadly, "Master, I, Zhang Tianhe, have failed to live up to your expectations. Please punish me." The other disciples of the Jingyi school also knelt down. All of them were crying, feeling indignant and sad. Zhang Tianshi was silent for a while, and then his voice came slowly. "This is fate, and it can't be changed by human beings. Get up, all of you." After saying that, he fell into complete silence and did not speak again. However, Zhang Tianhe and the others knelt on the ground and refused to get up. They knew that they had ruined the great event that the master had prepared for 10 years. Moreover, if the mystical silver fox didn't die, the consequences would be unimaginable. Their mistakes would be even more heinous. Although they didn't have the vertical sword formation at this time, Ao Wushuang was still locked in the sword cage and couldn't escape. She looked eagerly in the direction of Su Yi in the distance, and her heart was full of expectation and worry. "Wang Yuanshan, can you come back alive?" Chapter 856. Although Zhang Tianshi didn't pursue the matter any further, Zhang Ling quickly came out of seclusion and rushed over. She had been meditating, but there had been an earth-shattering explosion on the side peak next to her. She had almost been sent flying, so how could she cultivate normally? Zhang Ling flew out of the hall and saw smoke and dust filling the top of the side peak from afar. It was where the Dharmakaya of the absolute love extinguishing formation was. Zhang Ling's heart suddenly sank, and she felt a chill run down her spine. "You almost there?" At this time Zhou Ping, who had been guarding her, also rushed out. She only took a glance and exclaimed, "Oh no, could it be that the formation has been broken?" Although Zhang Ling had secretly guessed this result, she still glared at Zhou Ping, as if she hated her jinx. Zhang Ling shouted in a low voice, "Let's go and have a look." The two of them soon arrived at the top of the mountain and saw Ao Wushuang, who was imprisoned in the sword cage. Zhang Ling immediately frowned and asked sternly, "What happened?" Zhang Ling was a senior cultivator among the older generation of cultivators, and Zhou Ping was her eldest disciple. Her seniority was also very high among the younger generation of cultivators. Therefore, as soon as the two of them appeared, Zhang Tianhe and the disciples of the Jingyi school came over to greet them. Zhang Tianhe knelt on the ground with a thud and said with a face full of shame, "Eldest aunt, I failed to live up to the trust of the sect. When the absolute love extinguishing formation was activated, it failed. The formation was damaged and the cliff collapsed." Zhang Ling's face darkened when she heard this. Although her cultivation in the Jingyi school was not high, she had a high status and power. She had naturally participated in what had happened 10 years ago. At this time, when she heard that the plan that her younger brother had painstakingly planned for 10 years had failed, how could she not be angry? Zhang Ling was furious and shouted, "Why did the formation fail?" As she spoke, Her eyes suddenly swept over Ao Wushuang with incomparable sharpness. Although Zhang Tianhe also had some suspicions that it had something to do with Ao Wushuang, he couldn't confirm it, so he didn't dare to make wild guesses. He just said, "Uncle Master, it happened so suddenly. I don't know what's going on either. In short, as the person in charge of the magic formation, I have an unshakable responsibility for what happened in front of me. However, the other brothers are innocent." As soon as Zhang Tianhe said this, the brothers next to him were all moved and said, "Eldest aunt, this has nothing to do with Zhang Tianhe. Don't punish him. If you want to punish someone, punish us." It could be said that Zhang Ling had watched Zhang Tianhe grow up. Ever since Zhang Tianhe had lost to Li Yundong, his temperament had changed. His original impetuousness and arrogance had been completely wiped away. Although he was a direct descendant of the Celestial Master, he did not have a trace of a playboy's aura. Although Zhang Ling was angry and resentful of what was happening in front of her, she couldn't help but secretly nod at Zhang Tianhe's actions. She thought to herself, "My nephew has finally improved. It seems that the previous few setbacks weren't in vain. My nephew has finally made progress. It seems that the previous setbacks haven't been in vain." In Zhang Ling's opinion, the crime of destroying the absolute love-extinguishing formation was so great that even if Zhang Tianhe was Zhang Tianhe's biological son, he couldn't get away with it. If he was blamed, he would probably be imprisoned for 10 years. If this crime fell on him, it would be very disadvantageous to his cultivation. Zhang Ling was deeply gratified by Zhang Tianhe's change. She wanted to help him get away with it, so she pointed at Ao Wushuang and asked, "Why is she here?" As she said this, Zhang Ling quickly winked at Zhou Ping. Zhou Ping had been with Zhang Ling since she was a child, so she knew her very well. In addition, she had always been secretly in love with Zhang Tianhe. Seeing that he had caused such a big trouble, she wanted to help him get away with it, but she didn't know how to do it. At this time, seeing Zhang Ling winking at her, how could she not understand? Zhou Ping immediately shouted, "Ao Wushuang, did you destroy this formation?" At this time, Ao Wushuang had let go of what she was most worried about. She was only worried about the safety of Wang Yuanshan. She looked at the northeast in a daze, as if she hadn't heard Zhou Ping's words. She didn't say a word or blink. Zhou Ping was a little angry. Just as she was about to step forward, she was stopped by Zhang Ling and shouted, "Ao Wushuang, you know you have a guilty conscience. Don't you dare to speak?" Ao Wushuang turned her head and looked at her lightly. She smiled and turned her head again, still not saying a word. The others were all furious and wanted to scold this bold fox spirit. But Zhang Ling had already achieved her goal. She shouted sternly, "Ao Wushuang, you are so bold. You trespassed into the forbidden area of our Jingyi school, destroyed my magic formation, and ruined my plan. Do you know how big your sin is?" This time, Ao Wushuang didn't even look at her. She was still looking into the distance, as if she was looking forward to seeing her sweetheart appear in the next second. Seeing that she was ignoring her, Zhang Ling's face darkened. She said to Zhang Tianhe, "It's obvious that this fox spirit has eaten the heart of a bear and the heart of a leopard. She came here to make trouble, trying to destroy the magic formation and save the mystical silver fox. Zhang Tianhe, it's not your fault. You can get up." Zhang Tianhe hesitated for a moment and asked, "Then, what about Ao Wushuang?" Zhang Ling snorted coldly and said, "Unrighteousness leads to self-destruction. Kill her on the spot." The other disciples of the Jingyi school had long hated Ao Wushuang. If it weren't for her, they wouldn't have had to bear such a big sin. At this time, hearing Zhang Ling's words, he immediately looked at Ao Wushuang with a murderous look. Zhang Tianhe was shocked and quickly said, "Auntie, but she's a member of the Fox Zen sect." Zhang Ling immediately became furious. "What's wrong with the Fox Zen sect? What's there to be afraid of?" Zhang Tianhe said in a low voice awkwardly, "No, Auntie. Now the person in charge of the Fox Zen sect is Li Yundong." Zhang Ling was speechless when she heard this. A crooked and evil sect was in charge of a great cultivator, who could be said to be their benefactor. If Li Yundong hadn't single-handedly defeated the Japanese cultivation sects at Mount Longhu, the Jingyi school would have lost a lot of face. As the saying goes, when you beat a dog, you have to look at its master. What's more, Li Yundong's love and partiality for his subordinates of the Fox Zen school could be seen at the Taoist assembly, especially how much Li Yundong doted on Su Chan. Even a blind man could see that, and Ao Wushuang was Su Chan's master. With these layers of relationships, if they overdid things and Li Yundong got angry, what could they do? Li Yundong had already reached the top phase of the Jinshin at Mount Longhu. Now, with his cultivation and talent, he had probably reached the Thunder Retribution phase. Although the power of the Jingyi school was huge, and they were not afraid of Li Yundong, at present, the Jingyi school was in trouble both inside and outside. It was not easy for them to ease their relationship with Li Yundong, because of the previous battle on Mount Longhu. If they were to fight with the Thunder Retribution Master because of this matter, it would not be worth it. However, Zhang Ling couldn't swallow what she had said before in front of the juniors. For a moment, her face turned red and white, and she didn't know what to say. Seeing this, Zhou Ping hurriedly said, "Shitty Tianhe, hurry up and take the other shitty to seal up this place. Just trap the mystical silver fox here. It won't be too late to deal with her after we go to Li Yundong and ask for an explanation." The reason why Zhou Ping had always been able to win Zhang Ling's trust and favor was not because of her high cultivation talent, but because she had an exquisite heart that ordinary people could not match. She was very good at figuring out people's minds, and could give herself the idea she wanted when she needed it. When Zhang Ling heard this, she immediately said decisively, "Yes, you're right. Ao Wushuang is a member of the Fox Zen sect. Since Li Yundong is the leader of the Fox Zen sect, he should be responsible for this matter." As she said this, she turned to Zhou Ping and said, "Go to his house and tell him what happened here. Ask him to give us an explanation. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude." Humph. Zhou Ping was so scared that her pretty face turned pale. She thought to herself, "Ah, master, are you serious? You want me to go to this big villain and say such things? He can crush me with one finger now." Zhou Ping could also see how fast Li Yundong's cultivation was. When he was in Mount Tianlong, he hadn't even reached the Yangshan phase, but now he was already catching up with the top cultivation masters in the world. Seeing Zhou Ping's dispirited look, Zhang Ling couldn't help but say angrily, "You good-for-nothing bastard, what are you afraid of? Don't you know what it means to walk all over the world with reason, and to be unable to move an inch without reason?" Li Yundong connived at the disciples of the sect to commit such a heinous crime. I don't believe that he would dare to not give an explanation. Why? Do you want me to go to the sect at this time? It was the awakening Thunder Retribution period, and no one was willing to come out of seclusion. Zhou Ping had no choice but to say in a low voice, "Master, I see. I'll go now." Zhang Ling nodded, and couldn't help but turn to look at Zhang Tianhe. Seeing that he was hesitant to speak, she had an idea and immediately said, "Tianhe, you go too." Zhang Tianhe was stunned. "Me?" But soon he agreed and said, "Okay, I'll listen to eldest aunt." Zhou Ping was immediately overjoyed. She immediately regarded the hard task in front of her as a good one. She suppressed the joy in her heart and said to Zhang Tianhe with a smile, "Shitty Tianhe, we're going down the mountain together again." Zhang Tianhe remembered that, apart from the Taoist assembly, the last time he had gone down the mountain with Zhou Ping was when they had gone to besiege the Fox Zen sect and joined forces with the 6 major sects to besiege Mount Tianlong. Zhang Tianhe was filled with emotion for a moment. He saluted and said, "Eldest Shiji, please take care of me along the way." Zhou Ping was overjoyed and finally couldn't help but smile. "Don't mention it. I still need Shitty Tianhe to take care of me." Zhang Ling knew what her disciple was thinking. She had asked Zhang Tianhe to accompany her. On the one hand, it was to strengthen the reputation of the sect, so that her disciple wouldn't be at a disadvantage in public. On the other hand, it was to matchmake the two of them, which would be a good thing in the future. Zhang Ling shouted, "Don't talk nonsense. Such a big thing has happened, and you're still in the mood to be polite. Hurry up and go." Zhou Ping was shocked and flew to Tianan City with Zhang Tianhe. The two of them flew for a long time. When they reached the ground of Tianan City, from a distance, they could see a large, dense thundercloud rolling in the sky. There were bursts of thunder in the thundercloud, and it was as dense as a drum. These days, Zhang Tianshi and Zhang Kongyan had been taking turns to go through the thunder retribution. Zhou Ping and Zhang Tianhe were used to the sound of thunder, and it was as normal as eating and drinking. However, they had never heard such dense and loud thunder. Especially when they looked from afar. They could see 4 faint whirlpools in the thundercloud. Zhang Tianhe's face suddenly changed and he whispered, "No way?" Zhou Ping asked curiously, "What do you mean?" Zhang Tianhe looked at the rolling thundercloud in shock and said, This seems to be the 9th heaven divine thunder. Could it be that Li Yundong has already reached the 9th level of thunder retribution?" Zhou Ping was shocked. "That's impossible. This is his first time going through the thunder retribution, and he can reach the 9th level?" Zhang Tianhe's face darkened, and he said slowly, "It's not impossible. Do you know why the mystical silver fox was called the mystical silver fox? Do you think she was born to be called the mystical silver fox?" Although Zhou Ping had been re-educated by Zhang Lingji and had a high seniority, she was not a direct disciple after all. Zhang Tianhe, on the other hand, was a legitimate direct disciple. He could read many of the secret books and records of the sect. Over the past few days, he had reflected on his painful experience and started cultivating again. He had read a lot of books and records, including many old events. Zhou Ping asked curiously, "Yes, what's the original name of the mystical silver fox? Why was she called the mystical silver fox later?" Zhang Tianhe pointed to the thundercloud in the sky and said, "It was because the mystical silver fox once stole the secret of heaven when she was going through the thunder retribution and comprehended the profound truth of the way of Xian. So she was called the mystical silver fox." Zhou Ping suddenly understood, but then she was shocked and cried out, "Is Li Yundong also stealing the secret of heaven now?" Chapter 857. Although Li Yundong had rested for a while these days, Ruan Hongling and the others were too timid to tell him about the mystical silver fox. They didn't want to hide it on purpose, but they wanted to protect Li Yundong. Ruan Hongling knew that if Li Yundong rushed to Japan in his current state, he would be courting death, and it would be in vain. Therefore, Li Yundong had been concentrating on crossing the thunder tribulation with the little girl these days. After the yin and yang qi of the two of them converged, the changes were extremely obvious. As the saying goes, the lonely yang does not grow, and the lonely yin does not grow. When Li Yundong only had yuan yang qi in his body, he could only stay in the clouds of the thunder tribulation for 1 or 2 minutes at most. But now the yin and yang qi in his body were gathered, and they were endless. He could stay in the clouds for more than 10 minutes, and the time was even longer. The longer he could stay in the clouds, the more spiritual qi he could absorb. Moreover, Li Yundong had experienced the power of the heavenly thunder when he first started cultivating. Although the power of the heaven tribulation and the thunder tribulation were different, they were all from weak to strong. There were a total of 81 heavenly thunders. In the past, Li Yundong's strength was not strong. He didn't have a yang spirit or a jinshin. Naturally, it was impossible for him to withstand the thunder tribulation. Therefore, he could only focus on avoiding it. If he could avoid 81 heavenly thunders, he would pass. However, the power of heaven was unpredictable. If it was so easy to get through the heaven tribulation, the cultivators in the world would not have to be afraid of it. The last heavenly thunder was so wide and powerful that Li Yundong still remembered it clearly. It was impossible to avoid it by relying on human strength. There were 9 realms of the thunder tribulation. In each realm, he had to withstand 9 heavenly thunders in a row. Previously, Li Yundong had to withstand 9 heavenly thunders with increasing power by himself, so that he could break through to the primary realm of the thunder tribulation. However, after reaching the second realm, he had to experience 18 heavenly thunders with increasing power. The further he went, the more heavenly thunders he had to go through, and the more powerful they would be. After reaching the 9th realm, the power of 81 heavenly thunders was unimaginable to ordinary people. If Li Yundong hadn't obtained Su Chan's primordial yin qi, he might not have been able to break through to the 9th level, even if he had been given another 10 years. If cultivation could only rely on time and hard work to break through, the world would be full of thunder retribution and Jinshin masters. The first half of Wang Chongyang's life was wasted and dejected. He was cynical of the world and accomplished nothing. Lu Dongbin went to Chang and to take the imperial examinations at the age of 46, and failed every time he tried. He Xingu, in her budding years, became a tofu beauty, selling tofu to support her family. If they didn't have any fortuitous encounters in life, they would just be ordinary people among the masses. However, Wang Chongyang met Lu Dongbin and received his teachings. That was how he founded the Chuanjin sect. Lu Dongbin met Han Zhongli and was enlightened by him. He Xingu met Tai Guili, Lu Dongbin, and Zhang Guilao. That was how she became the only female immortal among the 8 immortals. Before they had these fortuitous encounters, no one dared to say what would happen to them in the future. Maybe Wang Chongyang would be a loathsome Wang Baofeng for the rest of his life. Lu Dongbin would be a destitute student for the rest of his life. And He Xiangu would be a tofu beauty at best for the rest of her life. But once they had a fortuitous encounter, they immediately became like the dragon in the wind and the tiger in the clouds. From then on, the golden scales turned into dragons. It could be seen that fortuitous encounters were more important than talent, and even more precious than hard work. Li Yundong had met Su Chan, Zi Yuan, and even Zhou Qin. That was why he had been able to make great progress in cultivation. If he hadn't met them, he would probably have been a useless otaku for the rest of his life. At this time, as soon as the yin and yang qi in Li Yundong's body merged, it was like a dragon and a tiger, meeting the wind and clouds. All the way, he broke through 7 realms in a row. In addition to the first realm that he had broken through at the beginning, he rushed straight to the final 9th realm. When he reached the 9th realm, Zhou Qin, Su Chan, and Zi Yuan didn't dare to go through the thunder tribulation again, because the power of the heavenly thunder at this time was so strong that it could kill them in seconds. The power of the first thunder tribulation couldn't be compared with the power of the 9th thunder tribulation. The difference between the two was like the difference between the college entrance examination and the doctoral examination. If they stayed by the side for a while, they would be shocked by the abundant and terrifying power of heaven in the heavenly thunder. They would be numb all over and lose the ability to move freely, let alone accept the baptism of the heavenly thunder. Some cultivators knew that the mystical silver fox had once become one of the best cultivators in the world, and she had even become one of the most terrifying devils since ancient times. However, most of them didn't know how she did it. They just guessed that the mystical silver fox must have stolen the secret of heaven, so she became a 9-tailed celestial fox. But what was the secret of heaven? The cultivators couldn't give a specific answer. They had their own guesses, and there were different opinions. But only Li Yundong and the mystical silver fox knew what the secret of heaven was. The secret of heaven was a glimmer of hope for heaven. The power of the heavenly thunder was so great that if the divine thunder of the 9th heaven struck down, mountains and rivers could be smashed, and heaven and earth could be separated, let alone the small human beings. However, although the power of the heavenly thunder was great enough to kill everything, all living things in the world began with thunder. Only when the lightning struck the water did it give birth to life. It could be seen that there was a glimmer of life in the heavenly thunder. The reason why people could defeat heaven was because of the supreme wisdom and perseverance of the spirits of all living things. They could catch this fleeting glimmer of life under the constant bombardment of the heavenly thunder. The heavenly thunder was full of vitality and the power of heaven. Cultivators had to absorb the remaining vitality and the power of heaven at the moment when their young spirit was split apart. However, most cultivators couldn't catch the fleeting glimmer of life after the heavenly thunder. It was this little bit of unique power that made the mystical silver fox reborn. However, this glimmer of life was not something that anyone who was going through the thunder retribution could catch. The mystical silver fox had sneaked into the Buddhist sect to cultivate and obtained the boy Yuanyang Qi of Huifa. Then, she cultivated in the Taoist sect and understood the truth of Buddhism and Taoism. In the end, she had the capital to steal the secret of heaven. At this time, Li Yundong also understood the profound truth of Buddhism and Taoism. His body was a combination of yin and yang, and he was the reincarnated wisdom king. At this time, his talent, opportunity, and cultivation were no worse than that of the mystical silver fox who had not yet stolen the secret of heaven. After the baptism of the 8 stages of thunder retribution, Li Yundong's jinshin had been condensed and incredibly thick. At this time, his whole body was emitting a dazzling golden light. Even the thick thunderclouds could not hide the light of his jinshin. At this time, the sky seemed to have sensed Li Yundong's challenge. As long as he survived this thunder retribution, Li Yundong would jump into the 9th realm of flying immortal, which was also the last realm of cultivation. Once he reached the 9th realm, it meant that Li Yundong had the admission ticket and qualification certificate to enter the heaven realm. As long as he was willing, he could ascend to become an immortal at any time and become a part of the heaven realm. From then on, the heavenly thunder would no longer be a threat to him, but a sharp weapon that he could use to threaten secular cultivators. In other words, Li Yundong would jump from being oppressed to being oppressed from now on. This was like a serf turning over and becoming a landlord. From then on, the world would change greatly. But how could God easily let a person who used to be a serf turn over and become a landlord so easily? At this moment, the majesty of the heaven had suffered the most serious provocation, and the heavenly thunder had burst out with unprecedented power. The power of the 9th heaven thunder was equal to that of the 9th heaven thunder, but the only difference was that the 9th heaven thunder did not have any vitality, so if one was hit, they would die. However, there was a glimmer of vitality in the 9th heaven thunder. As long as one could grasp it, one could come back from the dead. At this time, the heavenly thunder was dense and rolling. 81 bolts of heavenly thunder struck down continuously. The heavenly thunder was so dense that it was as if 81 giant bombs had exploded in the sky in a row. The rumbling sound was continuous and shocking. At the beginning, Li Yundong's jinshin remained motionless under the violent bombardment. It was like a solid rock in a stormy sea. No matter how the rain and wind blew, or how the heavenly thunder danced wildly, it was as steady as a mountain. At this time, Su Chan, Zi Yuan, and Zhou Qin were standing on the balcony, looking up at the thunderclouds in the sky nervously. The little foxes of the Fox Zen School, Li Yundong's disciple Lin Miao, and Zi Yuan's junior sister Ruan Hongling, were also standing on the balconies on both sides, staring at the sky. At this time, the sky was filled with flashes of lightning and rolling thunder. It was like an ancient battlefield where the fighting shook the sky. Many mortals in Tiannan City were also shocked by the rare sound of thunder. They stared at the sky with their mouths agape, not knowing what was going on. Although the speed of the heavenly thunder was extremely fast, Su Chan and the others still nervously and carefully counted for Li Yundong. 68, 69, 70. Su Chan grabbed the handrail of the balcony nervously and couldn't help exclaiming, "Sister Zi Yuan, it's the 70th heavenly thunder. The 71st, the 72nd. The 8th thunder has passed, and now it's the 9th. At first, the speed of the heavenly thunder was extremely fast and extremely dense, but the later it went, the slower it became. It was as if an invisible giant had to raise the Mjolnir hammer higher and longer every time it fell. Especially after the last heavenly thunder of the 8th thunder, Li Yundong's jinshin was finally smashed by the heavenly thunder. Zi Yuan, Su Chan, Zhou Qin, and other cultivators with higher cultivation could even see the fragments of the jinshin rolling in the thunderclouds in the heavenly thunder. Li Yundong quickly focused his mind, and his jinshin yang spirit gathered together again. But as soon as it was gathered, the 73rd heavenly thunder suddenly fell and smashed his jinshin yang spirit into pieces again. This repeated until the 99th and 80th heavenly thunder. The last heavenly thunder did not fall for a long time, and Li Yundong seemed to be at the end of his tether, unable to gather his jinshin for a long time. At this time, Zhang Tianhe and Zhou Ping also arrived downstairs of Li Yundong's residence. For a moment, the two of them forgot to go upstairs. They all focused their attention on the sky, waiting for the 81st heavenly thunder to fall. After this heavenly thunder, If Li Yundong failed, there would be no need for them to go up again. Without Li Yundong, they wouldn't have to worry so much. They could directly punish Ao Wushuang. But if Li Yundong passed through this last heavenly thunder, he would be on an equal footing with the leaders of any sect in the world. From then on, any cultivator in the world would have to respectfully call him Great Jinren when they saw him. This 20-year-old boy would have the qualifications and strength to establish a sect. But they didn't know whether after this heavenly thunder, there would be one less great master in the world, or one more great master who could steal the secrets of heaven. In addition, yesterday, it seems that I didn't do the update on the mobile phone. Some readers came early in the morning to ask me if I was wrong. Tang. I'd like to state here that I'm only responsible for updating the website. I'm not responsible for any updates in other places. So someone must have made a mistake on the mobile phone. If there's a mistake in the update, I'll definitely be responsible, such as the previous UG. But if there are any chapters on other websites that are completely inconsistent, I can't do anything about it, because I didn't do it, and it's not under my control. I can't do anything about it even if I want to. Even if I can, I don't have so much time and energy to do it. In the future, if you find that the content of the chapter is inconsistent with the content of the book on the mobile phone, you might as well log on to the official website to see the updated content. Everything will be based on the website updates. Chapter 858. The might of the heavenly thunder could not be withstood by a body of flesh and blood. However, humans were the wisest of all living things, and yet they were able to find a way out of the impossible. When Zhang Tianhe and Zhou Ping saw the 991st bolt of heavenly thunder fall, the world was instantly illuminated. Even cultivators like them couldn't help but cover their eyes and tilt their heads, not daring to look directly at such a light. The deafening sound of thunder pierced their eardrums and made them feel pain. Countless glasses in Tianan City were shattered by the earth-shattering thunder. Many residents were so frightened by the thunder that they rushed out of their homes and looked at the sky in fear, as if the end of the world was coming in the next second. Zhang Tianhe and Zhou Ping couldn't help but turn pale. After the light of the heavenly thunder disappeared, they removed their hands from their eyes. Zhou Ping grabbed Zhang Tianhe's sleeve with trepidation and said in a trembling voice, "Shitty Tianhe, how could anyone survive such a powerful heavenly thunder?" Zhou Ping had always been very strong in the past, but in front of Zhang Tianhe, she seemed very docile. Zhang Tianhe also whispered with fear on his face, "Man can conquer nature. There will always be someone who can defeat the power of heaven, but I don't know if Jinren Li can do it." Zhou Ping said in a low voice, "Then do you think this Li? Jinren Li, did he succeed?" Zhang Tianhe looked at the sky with a solemn expression. At this time, the thunderclouds were no longer rolling and boiling, and the sky slowly calmed down. After a while, lightning flashed and it began to rain. The rain was delicate and gentle, immediately comforting many people who had been frightened by the heavenly thunder. Zhang Tianhe sighed softly and said, "It's not clear yet. Let's go and visit Jinren Li. We'll know whether he succeeded or failed in a while." As he spoke, the two walked upstairs together. Upstairs, Zhang Tianhe reached out and knocked on the door. A crisp female voice came from inside. "You're here. Who is it?" There was an unconcealable joy in this voice, and the crackling footsteps made it seem that the person who came was incomparably excited. Zhang Tianhe immediately said to Zhou Ping with great emotion, "There is an extremely young great master in today's cultivation world. Alas, I don't know when I will be able to cultivate to this level. Jinren Li's cultivation speed is really beyond our reach. I'm ashamed of my inferiority." Zhou Ping's gaze was a little complicated. Normally, she would have sneered at them to express her disdain, but at this time, she felt that everything was fine with Zhang Tianhe by her side. Her mood had also become much better, and she was not in the mood to find fault with others. Zhou Ping looked at Zhang Tianhe with adoration in her eyes and said softly, "Shitty Tianhe, you don't have to belittle yourself. In my eyes, you have always been the best of our Jingyi school. No matter who you compare with, you will not be inferior. Furthermore, there was an order to one's cultivation, and there was a specialization. It didn't mean that one's cultivation would be higher or greater than one's in the future. If a hero was judged by age, then Jinren Wang Chongyang would not have achieved so much in the future. Hearing this, Zhang Tianhe smiled slightly, and couldn't help turning his head to look at Zhou Ping. He usually didn't have any special feelings for this Shiji of his. At this time, when he heard her say this, he saw that her eyes were particularly gentle when she looked at him, completely devoid of her usual shrewdness. He couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat, as if he had understood something. For a moment, his eyes seemed to be enlightened. The two of them looked at each other at the door, and for a moment, they were stunned. It wasn't until Su Chan pulled the door open that they came to their senses and turned their heads back in embarrassment. When Su Chan saw Zhou Ping, the joy on her face suddenly disappeared. She said with some vigilance, "What are you doing here?" At this time, Zhou Ping's heart was pounding, so she didn't care about these things with Su Chan. She just lowered her head, blushed, and kept silent like a little girl. After all, Zhang Tianhe was born in a prestigious family, and his upbringing was extremely strict. He could control himself in any situation. He quickly calmed down, coughed dryly, and said, "Zhang Tianhe of the Jingyi school, Zhou Ping, would like to meet Jinren Li." Su Chan looked him up and down and blinked. "I know you. Why are you looking for our palm sect?" Seeing that Zhang Tianhe was speaking politely, the little girl didn't open the door, nor did she move out of the way, although the vigilance on her face had lessened a lot. At this time, Zhou Ping came to her senses. Seeing that Su Chan was quite rude to Zhang Tianhe, her face darkened. She was about to scold her, but Zhang Tianhe immediately quietly pulled her back, and she shut her mouth again. Zhang Tianhe smiled slightly and saluted. "We are here to congratulate Jinren Li on breaking through the 9th level of Thunder Retribution." Su Chan immediately beamed with joy and said proudly, "How did you know that our palm sect has broken through the 9th level of Thunder Retribution? You're amazing. How did you get here so quickly?" Zhang Tianhe and Zhou Ping looked at each other and thought to themselves, "Sure enough, Li Yundong has broken through the 9th level of Thunder Retribution." At this time, a gentle man's voice sounded from inside the door. It was not very magnetic, but it was as beautiful as the sound of nature. There was an indescribable feeling in it. Zhang Tianhe only felt that the voice was full of vitality, as if a dying person could live a little longer after hearing it. "Channer, don't block the door. There are distinguished guests here. Why don't you let them in? Is this how our Fox Zen sect treats its guests?" Su Chan quietly stuck out her tongue, then opened the door, stepped aside, and said with a smile, "Well, our palm sect is inviting you in." Only then did Zhang Tianhe and Zhou Ping look inside. They saw many beautiful women standing in the room, all looking at Li Yundong like stars surrounding the moon. They carefully looked at him from head to toe inside, as if they wanted to see how this master, who had passed the 9th level of Thunder Retribution, was different from ordinary people. Zhou Qin and Lin Miao in particular stared at Li Yundong with their eyes wide open. They felt that the man in front of them didn't look much different from before, but there was something different about him, which made them feel very strange. They were so careful and serious that they didn't even notice that someone had come outside. However, when Zi Yuan saw them, she immediately bowed slightly and said, "It turns out that a fellow Taoist of the Jingyi school is here." Zhang Tianhe hurriedly bowed to Zi Yuan and said, "Jinren Zi Yuan, long time no see. It seems that your cultivation has advanced by leaps and bounds." At this time, Zi Yuan had also successfully reached the realm of Thunder Retribution. Although she was not as abnormal and terrifying as Li Yundong, who had broken through the 9th level of Thunder Retribution in one go, she had successfully broken through to the 3rd level. At this time, Zi Yuan's immortal qi was even stronger, and her beautiful and elegant face looked even more graceful and otherworldly. At first glance, Zhang Tianhe felt that she was like Chang'e under the moon who had left the secular world, or a fairy from the heavenly palace who had descended to the world. She was so beautiful that he didn't dare to take another look at her. Zhang Tianhe had always had a strong love for Zi Yuan, but this kind of love was only out of an abnormal instinct. As the saying goes, everyone loves beauty. However, after a series of setbacks, his mentality had completely calmed down. He knew that although his identity was noble, in terms of cultivation, he was really not as good as Li Yundong, let alone Zi Yuan. Therefore, he no longer had any improper thoughts about Zi Yuan. At this time, his expression was polite, but there was no longer the strong affection in his eyes. What kind of person was Zi Yuan? She could see the change in Zhang Tianhe at a glance. She also smiled slightly and said, "Zhenren Zhang, congratulations on your improvement in cultivation. The Zhengyi school has a successor." Zhang Tianhe said with a face full of shame. "I'm very ashamed. Compared to Zhenren Zi Yuan, Zhenren Li is really not worth mentioning." At this time, Li Yundong also smiled slightly and said, "Zhenren Zhang, you come from a famous sect and have a deep foundation. In the future, you will definitely accumulate a lot and catch up. We are just a little ahead now. Besides, when it comes to cultivation, there is no distinction between who obtains the Tao and who learns it. If you are ahead for a while, you lack the Tao." Zhang Tianhe saw that at this time, Li Yundong already had the aura of a great master. He was calm and composed, like a deep pool and a towering mountain. Just by standing there without saying a word, he had an admirable aura. At this time, when he spoke, it made people's hearts tremble. He couldn't help but have a good impression of him. In the past, Li Yundong had been reborn from the Jindan, so his qi and blood were much more vigorous than ordinary people. In addition, he didn't know how to restrain himself in the past, and his realm was not high enough. So wherever he went, he was like a huge yang magnetic field. Such a magnetic field was admittedly able to attract erotic women, but it was hard to avoid the same repulsion for similarly masculine men. Later, Li Yundong's cultivation increased and his realm improved. When he reached the realm of returning to nature, all his aura and dharma qi were restrained, and there was not a trace of it on the outside. When he stood in the crowd, no one could tell that he was any different from ordinary people. However, although this prevented many people from feeling disgusted when they saw him, it was also inevitable that he would lose the feeling of being a treasure and vanish in the mortal world. Now, although Li Yundong's aura was still very weak, he gave people a very comfortable feeling at this time. Whether it was different or similar, at first sight, there was a sense of admiration and closeness. When Zhang Tianhe saw that Li Yundong's cultivation had reached such a high realm, he still spoke so modestly and politely. He admired him even more. He smiled and said, "Zhenren Li, you're too polite. Please forgive me if I offended you in the past." Li Yundong remembered the unpleasant things that had happened between him and Zhang Tianhe. He chuckled and said, "As the saying goes, no discord, no concord. Let bygones be bygones." As they spoke, the two of them looked at each other and smiled. It was as if they had met to forget their enmity. Zhou Ping, who was standing to one side, saw that the two of them were becoming more and more polite. She couldn't help but feel a little worried. "This surety is too much. Why are you so polite? How can I ask for forgiveness in the future?" At this time, Li Yundong had reached a state where his mind was clear and unhindered. He seemed to be able to feel Zhou Ping's thoughts. He turned his head and said to Zhou Ping with a smile, "Shinren Zhou, as the saying goes, one doesn't come to the temple for no reason. You didn't come here this time just to congratulate me for passing the 9 levels of thunder retribution, did you?" If it had been in the past, Zhou Ping might have glared at him and stepped forward to denounce him. But at this time, Li Yundong was so generous that even she didn't dare to be careless. She said timidly, "Master Li, we did come here for something." At this time, Zhang Tianhe, who was standing to one side, was afraid that she would speak too harshly, so he naturally took over the conversation. "Master Li, Ao Wushuang, a disciple of your sect, has broken into the forbidden area of our Zhengyi school, destroyed my magic formation, and ruined my plan. She has now been detained by us. Now we want to ask you for an explanation." If Zhang Tianhe and the others had said such words as soon as they came up, the Zhengyi school would have had one more terrifying enemy. However, when Zhang Tianhe said it again at this time, the originally sharp words sounded much more pleasing to the ear. The people of Fox Zen sect were shocked when they heard this. They all gathered around and said at once, "What? Little Shirshu Ao Wushuang broke into the forbidden area of Mount Longhu? What is she doing there? Magic formation? What magic formation? They chattered for a while, and the room suddenly became very lively. Su Chan was also so flustered that her pretty face turned pale. She wanted to ask more questions, but she held back and turned to look at Li Yundong. Li Yundong nodded slightly to her, indicating for her to rest assured. He was silent for a while, then turned to Zhang Tianhe and said, Jinren Zhang, if I'm not mistaken, Ao Wushuang went to destroy the absolute love extinguishing formation, right? Seeing that Li Yundong didn't show any signs of turning hostile, Zhang Tianhe secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He said, yes. Li Yundong frowned slightly. He immediately realized something and blurted out, Wang Yuanshan has already left the mountain? Did he go to find the mystical silver fox? Chow. The mystical silver fox has already appeared in the world? Zhang Tianhe looked at Li Yundong in surprise and said, Jinren Li, this is already a well-known event in the cultivation world of Zhongri. Don't you know? Someone from the Japanese cultivation world came to you for help before. Li Yundong was stunned. Zi Yuan, who was beside him, immediately frowned and glared at Wan Hongling with sharp eyes. Wan Hongling pouted and lowered her head aggrievedly. Although she was full of dissatisfaction and wanted to say something, she still endured it in front of outsiders. In the blink of an eye, Li Yundong understood Wan Hongling's thoughts and said to Zi Yuan, Hongling is being kind. She doesn't want to disturb us. Don't blame her. As he said this, Li Yundong smiled and said to Zhang Tianhe, Jinren Zhang, don't worry. I will definitely give you a good time, but please treat Senior Ao Wushuang well. Zhang Tianhe's heart skipped a beat and he asked tentatively, Jinren Li, are you going to deal with the mystical silver fox? Li Yundong smiled slightly and said, of course. Zhang Tianhe couldn't help but be a little excited. He couldn't wait to see the battle between Li Yundong and the mystical silver fox. He wanted to know what kind of realm Li Yundong had cultivated to, and how powerful the mystical silver fox was. Even though Zhang Tianhe was relatively calm, he couldn't help urging at this time, Jinren Li, let's not delay any longer. Shall we go now? However, Li Yundong waved his hand and said with a smile, there's no hurry. Let's talk about it later. Zhang Tianhe couldn't help but say anxiously, how can I not be anxious? What's the matter that needs to wait for a while? Is it more important than the mystical silver fox? Li Yundong smiled, looked up at the sky, and said meaningfully, if you want to do a good job, you must first sharpen your weapons. How can you do it without good weapons before the war? As usual, we will carry out the free of charge to the end. Please support us with practical actions. If there are any chapters that are out of order, urging for updates, or wrong chapters, please register as a member of this site and send us a text message. We will do our best to meet your needs. Send it 24/7 hours a day. As usual, we will carry out the free of charge to the end. Please support us with practical actions. If there are any chapters that are out of order, urging for updates, or wrong chapters, please register as a member of this site and send us a text message. We will do our best to meet your needs. Send it 24/7 hours a day. Chapter 859. After Li Yundong said this, he nodded slightly to Zi Yuan, who was beside him. Asterisk bubble. Book. Asterisk. Zi Yuan looked at him with some confusion. She didn't understand why Li Yundong was still thinking of, if you want to do a good job, you must first sharpen your tools, at such a critical time. However, when she saw Li Yundong take out the glazed mirror and the purple gold luoyu plate, she immediately cried out. Her expression was absent-minded, and her eyes flickered. Wan Hongling, who was standing to one side, looked even more excited, and gave Zhou Ping a provocative look. In the past, she had suffered enough from Zhou Ping's sarcasm and supercilious eyes. Previously, at the inauguration ceremony, the Zhengyi school had used these two damaged powerful magical weapons to criticize them, which had almost caused her and her Shiji to be severely punished. Now, if these two powerful magical weapons were repaired, they would see what else they would say. When Zhang Tianhe and Zhou Ping saw Li Yundong take out these two powerful magical weapons, they couldn't help but be stunned. Zhou Ping's eyes flickered. She remembered that Yu Tian had run to the Zhengyi school to cry out his grievances, and that Li Yundong could repair powerful magical weapons at this time. She suddenly looked like she wanted to say something, but she was deterred by Li Yundong's temperament and swallowed her words. Zhang Tianhe seemed to have not thought of the connection between these two things. He was pleasantly surprised and said, "Zhenren Li can mend the sky? That's an eye-opener." Most cultivators knew how to use powerful magical weapons, but only a few people knew how to repair them. It could be said to be an extremely secretive divine skill in the cultivation world. In the past, the Punglai sect had been punished because of this divine skill. It could be said that an ordinary man was innocent, but he would get into trouble because of his wealth. Now that Li Yundong was using this divine skill in front of them, it was unknown whether he was secretly testing them, or if he was fearless. Li Yundong looked at the two of them deeply, then smiled at Su Chan, Ziyuan, and the others, indicating that they didn't have to worry. Then, he walked to the balcony and handed the purple gold luoyu plate to Ziyuan, who was beside him. He held the glazed mirror with both hands, went out of his body, and flew toward the thunderclouds. The energy of Li Yundong's young spirit at this time was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. As soon as he flew into the thunderclouds, it immediately caused the thunder to rumble again, and the thunderclouds churned violently. Li Yundong, who had gone through the 9 stages of thunder retribution, was no longer afraid of any heavenly thunder, except the 9 heavenly night thunder. Seeing the dense heavenly thunder above his head coming toward him, he smiled slightly and held up the glass mirror, making it float in front of him. Almost there, his hands were tied inside his body, his index fingers were placed together, his wrists were 2 to 3 inches apart, and his thumbs were bent and crossed 3 times. In the midst of the thunderclouds he chanted the mantra, Pauemo, Pasifudi, Peisha Ziyi, Yulu Ba Yi, Boluo Paluo Tabo Duoyi, Luo Hodi, Sanya Sanwu Tuoyi, Boyi Duo Paisha Er Yi, Peisha Er Yi, Peisha Ziyi, Sanemo Bodi Safuhi. This was the Medicine Buddha Foundation seal. The Medicine Buddha Foundation seal was one of the great gods and Buddhas in the world who could eliminate disasters, save the dying and heal the wounded, and turn misfortune into blessing. He was also one of the gods and Buddhas with a very high status, only below Vairocana and Amitabha Buddha. In Li Yundong's handprint, the 4 fingers on the left were the 4 elements of all living beings, namely, the 4 elements of earth, water, wind, and fire. The 4 fingers on the right were the 4 elements of the Buddha realm, namely color, law, body, and mind. Buddhism believed that all the diseases in the world originated from the disharmony of the 4 elements of the secular world. So the 4 elements of the Buddha realm were used to harmonize with the 4 elements of the world of all living beings. In the Mahamudra, the 2 thumbs were bent back and forth, summoning the 3 diseases of the 4 elements of the secular world, the Buddha realm, and the Buddha realm into the medicine pot, becoming the 3 medicines of reason, wisdom, and religion. At the same time, the moon was bound in the hand, and the 2 thumbs were used to get rid of the 2 selves, so as to summon the meaning of the emptiness of man and law. After reading The Secret Method of Patching Heaven, Li Yundong realized that it was actually a wonderful technique of borrowing power from heaven and then using human power to repair powerful magical weapons. However, after learning it, Li Yundong found that the original secret method of patching heaven was relatively limited. It could either use the spirit treasures of heaven and earth, herbs and rare treasures to repair magic, or use the thunder method to repair magic. However, Li Yundong suddenly thought that since the Medicine Buddha Foundation could remove all the diseases in the world and repair the human body and Dharmakaya, why couldn't it be used to repair powerful magical weapons? Although Buddhism and Taoism were 2 different schools, in the final analysis, they came from the same source. They were both seeking the true self and the true method. Their Taos were different, but their principles were the same. Their skills were different, but their methods were the same. Li Yundong held the Baisajayaguru Tathagata's fundamental seal. The heavenly thunder struck him, but it couldn't hurt his thunder tribulation yang spirit at all. Every bolt of heavenly thunder that struck his young spirit was like a huge wave hitting a rock, shattering with a loud bang. After each heavenly thunder was broken, there would be waves of blue light drifting around. These blue lights were the glimmer of life in the heavenly thunder. After they drifted around, they were quickly attracted by Li Yundong's Baisajayaguru Tathagata's fundamental seal, and quickly rushed toward Li Yundong's Mahamudra. It was almost there. Li Yundong's hands quickly turned blue. Blue was the color of the sea, and at this time, it represented infinite vitality. He held the blue light in his hands, and pressed it toward the sky-reaching glaze mirror in front of him. Suddenly, the blue light in the thunderclouds shone brightly, and the sky-reaching glaze mirror trembled violently. This burst of blue light wrapped around the broken powerful magical weapon like flowing water, moistening the dry and cracked earth like a spring rain. At this time, Li Yundong took a closer look, and saw that as the blue light flowed, the cracks all over the sky-reaching glaze mirror were slowly infiltrated by the blue light, and disappeared little by little. When the blue light completely disappeared, the sky-reaching glaze mirror emitted a faint blue fluorescent light. There was no longer any crack, and it was as good as before. He felt relieved and knew that his attempt had succeeded. Then he took the sky-reaching glaze mirror home. As soon as Li Yundong appeared, he saw Su Chan, Ziyuan, Zhou Qin, and the others surrounding him nervously. They looked at the sky-reaching glaze mirror in his hand. Li Yundong smiled at Ziyuan and said, "Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." Ziyuan saw the fluorescent light flowing on the sky-reaching glaze mirror. The spiritual energy contained in it seemed to be far stronger than before. The powerful magical weapon of her sect had not been destroyed in her hands. For a moment, she was so excited that she brushed the mirror with her hand, and remained silent. She didn't even notice that Li Yundong was talking to her. After a long time, she raised her head, tears in her eyes. She stared at Li Yundong blankly, unable to speak for a while. Li Yundong chuckled at her and said, "You don't have to thank me. Just give me the purple gold luo jade plate. If it hadn't been for this powerful magical weapon, I would have died under the divine tribulation." Ziyuan quickly turned her body sideways, and wiped the corner of her eye with the back of her hand. When she turned around again, she was already smiling and calm. She smiled and handed over the purple gold jade plate. Li Yundong did the same thing, and repaired the magical weapon to its original state. Zhang Tianhe, who was watching from the side, secretly sighed and exclaimed that it was amazing. Zhou Ping, on the other hand, was both respectful and fearful. She thought to herself, Li Yundong has helped Ziyuan repair these two powerful magical weapons of the sect. I'm afraid that he won't be able to do anything to her at the next inauguration ceremony. Zhou Ping didn't realize that because she had also observed that Zhang Tianhe's love for Ziyuan had weakened, her hostility towards Ziyuan had also decreased a lot. If it had been in normal times, she might have cursed Ziyuan in her heart. After Li Yundong had repaired the sky-reaching glaze mirror and the purple gold jade plate, he turned to Su Chan and said, "Channer, wait for me at home. I'll go and meet the mystical silver fox. I'll be back soon." Su Chan suddenly became very nervous. She quickly shook her head and said, "No, I have to go with you." Li Yundong knew that although the little girl's cultivation had increased greatly, he still refused to let her go with him. He shook his head and said, "No, the identity of the mystical silver fox is sensitive. You are a member of the Fox Zen School and my girlfriend. Ao Wushuang is also your master. You should avoid arousing suspicion." Su Chan said angrily, "What's the reason? That's why I have to go. If I don't go, wouldn't it be even more obvious?" At this time, Zhou Qin knew that if Li Yundong didn't let Su Chan go, she would have no hope. She had cultivated so hard just to hide aside when there was trouble and danger. An ordinary woman might like to watch her beloved man fight for her. But Zhou Qin was not such a woman. She was strong and competitive. She liked to fight on the front line with her beloved man. When necessary, she would use her body to cover him and die for him. In this way, he would remember her for the rest of his life. Seeing that Li Yundong didn't even let Su Chan go, Zhou Qin immediately tried to persuade him. "Su Chan is right. Master, you should let her go." Li Yundong turned his face and said with a faint smile, I should let you go, right? Zhou Qin's careful thoughts were exposed, but she didn't blush at all. She said righteously, if the master is in trouble, the disciple should bear the burden. Isn't this what I should do? Master, I know you are worried about my safety, but is it really safe to hide behind you for the rest of my life? Or do you think I'm still a burden now? These words were a little serious. Li Yundong knew that if he didn't let Zhou Qin go, she might blame him for the rest of her life in the future. Moreover, her Taoist heart would also be damaged because of this matter. Li Yundong sighed helplessly and nodded gently to Zhou Qin, but then he added, Don't do stupid things, do you hear me? Zhou Qin saw that Li Yundong was staring at her, as if he could see through her heart. Her heart trembled, and she nodded heavily. At this time, Lin Miao, who had blonde hair and blue eyes, looked at Li Yundong and opened her mouth, as if she wanted to go with him. However, Li Yundong said to her without hesitation, Lin Miao, don't say it. You haven't even passed the Zhuji phase. If you go, you will die. Not only will you not be able to help, but you will also be a burden. Su Chan, Zhou Qin, and Ziyuan can go, but you can't go. The big and small foxes of the Fox Zen school all looked at Li Yundong eagerly, as if waiting for him to take them to Japan to broaden their horizons and see what the strongest fox spirit of all time looked like. But hearing Li Yundong's words, they all hung their heads dejectedly. Chao Yi and Lu Yuehong looked at each other, then quickly comforted the disappointed little foxes. After Li Yundong had discussed everything, he, Su Chan, Ziyuan, and Zhou Qin all took their powerful magical weapons and prepared to go to Su Yi. At this time, Zhang Tianhe, who was standing to one side, said, Zhenrenli, if you don't mind, I will follow your lead and go with you. Although my cultivation is not very good, I can wave the flag and shout for support. Li Yundong quickly tried to persuade him. Zhenren Zhang, you are the future leader of the Jingyi school. How can you take the risk yourself? Zhang Tianhe smiled and said, If even you lose, it is very likely that there will be no Jingyi school in the future. When the nest is overturned, how can there be an intact egg? I believe that you know this truth, Zhenrenli. Li Yundong thought for a moment, nodded, and no longer stopped Zhang Tianhe. He looked in the direction of Su Yi and sighed slightly. I don't know what's going on there now. If we go now, is it too late? Chapter 860. Just before Zhang Tianhe and Zhou Ping went to Tianan City, in the distant Naswai, there was a thunderstorm. You almost there. When cultivators transcended the thunder tribulation, although the power of the ninth heaven divine thunder was just as great, the heavenly thunder was full of vitality. Although it was awe-inspiring and frightening, it was not enough to make people think of life and death. However, when the ninth heaven divine night thunder fell, everyone felt as if they were in the wilderness of hell in an instant. The air around them became scorching hot, without a trace of vitality, which made people desperate. The light, which was like the polar day, was so dazzling that many cultivators with lower cultivation even covered their eyes and wailed in pain. Some cultivators with profound cultivation avoided the extreme light at the first time. Then they opened their eyes, turned their heads, and boldly looked at the field. At this time, the heavenly thunder gradually disappeared. It turned out that the place where the mystical silver fox and Wang Yuanshan were located was empty. The ground under their feet had been struck by the heavenly thunder, and there was a huge round pit. There was smoke in it, and black stones and scorched earth were everywhere. There was no vitality at all. It seemed that both of them had been turned into powder by the heavenly thunder together. Could it be that the mystical silver fox is really dead this time? Almost everyone in the cultivation world of China who saw the situation on the field couldn't help but have a thought in their minds. Because of Zhou Chang's previous example, no one dared to be careless. Otherwise, before they had time to be happy for a long time, they would be caught off guard by the mystical silver fox. That would be too much joy before sorrow came to them. For a while, the cultivators on both sides of the mountain range began to search around nervously. The cultivators of the Chinese cultivation world released their powerful magical weapons, while the cultivators of the Japanese cultivation world took out their ghosts and spirits, looking for the aura of the mystical silver fox from afar. After searching for a long time, they finally confirmed that there was no trace of the mystical silver fox. No one knew who was the first to cheer in the Japanese cultivation sections. Then, there was an earth-shaking cheer on the top of the mountain like a tsunami. Ayase Shinguang, such a cynical man, couldn't help but put his palms together, close his eyes, and say to the sky with a sigh, "Amaterasu God, thank you." Fortunately, our Japanese cultivation world shouldn't have suffered this calamity. Although Ayase Izumo had been injured by the mystical silver fox before, she had a deep foundation, and her injury was not very serious. She also breathed a sigh of relief, and a faint smile appeared on her usually unsmiling face. She said with fear, "What a terrible opponent." Fortunately, it was a little late. Although the Chinese cultivation world on the opposite side saw that the mystical silver fox had disappeared without a trace, they could not be happy in any case. In this battle, although many people in the Japanese cultivation world had died, there were 200 million believers in Japan. Such a huge foundation was enough to support them to recover their vitality in a very short time. But what kind of people had died in the Chinese cultivation world? Zhou Chang was a veteran of the Chuanjian dragon sect, one of the top sects in the Chinese cultivation world. He was a rare lightning tribulation expert in the world. Wang Yuanshan, the #1 expert of the Chinese cultivation world, represented the pinnacle of individual cultivation in the Chinese cultivation world. Both of those rare experts had perished in battle. For the Chinese cultivation world, which was already in the degenerate age, it was like adding hail to snow. Although there were different sects in the past, many cultivators still held a glimmer of hope in their hearts. They hoped that Wang Yuanshan was not dead, especially Ding Nan. She didn't want Zhou Chang to die because of her, and then Wang Yuanshan to die in battle. It could be said that the collapse of the two highest peaks in the Chinese cultivation world had something to do with her. If someone talked about this matter in the future, it would be unimaginable. But no matter how hard Ding Nan and the cultivators of various sects searched, they could not find any trace of Wang Yuanshan, as if he had never appeared in this place. Ding Nan searched for a long time, and finally gave up. She landed on the top of the mountain. Her expression changed and her eyes flickered. No one knew what she was thinking. The cultivators of all sects in China still subconsciously isolated her. Among them, Mao Yichang, who had been sent flying by the mystical silver fox, also came to her senses at this time. Although she had a lot of thoughts about Ding Nan, it was not convenient for her to cause trouble at this time. At this time, she was extremely vile. Thinking of her performance in front of everyone before, she was both angry and upset. Especially at this time, when she heard a burst of laughter coming from the opposite mountain. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth and couldn't help cursing. These little devils are so heartless. Even Senior Zhou and Wang Dejimren are dead. How can they still laugh? As soon as she said this, some cultivators echoed with righteous indignation. That's right. These little devils are evil. They just killed the mystical silver fox and forgot about us. For a moment, the crowd on the top of the mountain was boiling with emotions. Du Fei, who was standing to one side, saw that something was wrong. Although he didn't like these Japanese people very much, he was experienced and prudent after all. He knew that he couldn't come at this time. Although the Japanese cultivation world had suffered heavy casualties, it would be a big mistake if he thought that these people could take advantage of the situation and kill them all. The reason why the Japanese cultivation world used to be like a soft persimmon in front of the mystical silver fox was that she could pinch them however she wanted. It was not because they were weak, but because the mystical silver fox was always stronger than all of them. This distance was a natural chasm for cultivators, and they could never cross it. If it weren't for Zhou Chang and his immortal trapping sword on their side, or if it weren't for Wang Yuanshan, if they fought against the mystical silver fox, their fate would be worse than that of the Japanese cultivation world. Du Fei was well aware of this. He was afraid that these people would get hot-headed and rush over recklessly. That would be a great trouble. Although the Japanese have forgotten to come and thank them for their help after the battle, they still owed them a favor. As the saying goes, the cultivation world of China and Japan is separated by a strip of water. Mountains don't move, water doesn't move, people don't move. One day they will meet again. Maybe this favor will come in handy when the time comes. In this world, it was easy to pay off a debt of money, but difficult to pay off a debt of love. This great favor of coming from thousands of miles away to help would probably be a headache for the Japanese cultivation world in the future. But if they were impulsive at this time, not only would this great favor be lost, but the other party might even bite back and take advantage of the situation. That would be a great disaster. Du Fei hastily advised from the side. Fellow Taoists, listen to me. It's really not the time to care about this. After all, the Japanese have also suffered heavy casualties. At this time, the enemy has died, which is understandable. At present, we are still in their territory, and Senior Zhou and Jimren Wang have passed away. Everyone, don't be impulsive. As the saying goes, impulsiveness is the devil. Du Fei's words were like a basin of cold water poured over their heads. Everyone thought about it and was extremely depressed. If Senior Zhou and Jimren Wang were still here, they would immediately fight with these little Japanese and kill them. Let's see if they dare to burn the bridge after crossing the river. The cultivators of all sects in the Chinese cultivation world all felt that the Chinese cultivation world had suffered a great loss this time. They felt extremely uncomfortable, so they didn't like the Japanese people on the opposite side. Especially when they heard the laughter on the opposite side of the mountain, it was even more ear-piercing. However, there was not only laughter in the Japanese cultivation world. Because the three giants of the Japanese Buddhist world had been forming the magic formation, it could be said that they had relied on the power of the magic formation to resist the attacks of most of the mystical silver foxes. Therefore, the Pure Land True sect, the Tiantai sect, and the Xinyan Tantrism had suffered extremely serious losses. After the battle, the monks looked around and saw that many of their friends were already covered in blood and lying on the ground, never to wake up again. Even though they were monks who could see through the secular world, and everything was empty, they couldn't help but feel sad. Many of them burst into tears. The great monk of the Xinyan Tantrism, Kaisai Hikaryuni, also had a face full of emotion. His eyes were filled with the palpitations of surviving a disaster. He put his palms together and said in a deep voice, Amitabha, everyone, they just went to the Western Paradise under the guidance of the Buddha. The dead have passed away. This is a good thing. It is a release from the secular world. We should recite the Reincarnation Sutra for them and celebrate them. At this time, the monks around, regardless of their sex, all put their palms together and praised in unison. The great monk is right. They went to the Western Paradise under the guidance of the Buddha. We should be happy. After that, everyone began to recite the reincarnation mantra loudly. Although it was the monks of the Pure Land True sect who recited the reincarnation mantra the most, it was not only the monks of the Pure Land True sect who recited the reincarnation mantra. The monks of the Tiantai sect and the Xinyan Tantrism were also familiar with the reincarnation mantra. At once, they recited the reincarnation mantra together. Namo Amitabha Night, Doda Gada Night, Doda Yesha, Amitabha Doda Papai. For a time, there was a burst of chanting on the top of the mountain, and the Dharma was solemn. But as soon as they finished reciting the sutra, they heard a buzzing voice suddenly coming from the sky. The voice belonged to a woman, cold and ferocious. They have indeed gone to the Western Paradise. Stop reciting the sutra and go to the Western Paradise with them. This sentence was really terrible to the extreme. In an instant, the whole world seemed to be quiet. On the mountains on both sides of the cultivation world in the middle sun, the noise, laughter, crying and chanting disappeared in an instant. Everyone seemed to have become mute in an instant. The air between heaven and earth seemed to have been suddenly sucked dry, and there was no sound around. Dead silence, a bone-chilling dead silence. Mystical silver fox. She was not dead. Why did the mystical silver fox not die under such an amazing power of the nine heavens god Night Thunder? No one was in the mood to investigate this question. The cultivators of the two countries, who had been secretly estranged from each other before, forgot all the unhappiness in an instant. They all looked at the sky in fear and despair, as if they had seen their own death, and the end of the world. Amaterasu God, may your glory give me blessings and strength to face the coming death and fear. Even Ayase Shenguang, a strong-willed great cultivator, closed his eyes in despair at this time, and had no intention of resisting at all. At this time, many of the cultivators who had been laughing broke down in an instant, crying and shouting in fear. At this time, the faces of the monks of various Buddhist sects were full of despair. A solemn and stirring atmosphere enveloped the top of Suye's mountain. The atmosphere was so oppressive that it was suffocating. There were even some cultivators with poor willpower who, in this extreme fear, shouted and slapped their own foreheads with a backhand, smashing their own bodies and young spirits into pieces. Those cultivators who were not crazy looked at the sky in fear, and their hearts were filled with despair. The mystical silver fox didn't die. Is she really invincible? Who else in the world can deal with her? Is the end of the world really coming? Chapter 861. When the ninth heaven divine night thunder fell, even the mystical silver fox thought that she was going to die. But soon she found that the moment the heavenly thunder fell, it slowed down, and there was a gap in it. The mystical silver fox had been fighting and fighting all her life. She had fought countless times and had rich experience. She had been able to escape from countless pursuits and encirclement. She had relied on her ability to capture the secrets of heaven that ordinary people could not. At this moment, she immediately broke free from Wang Yuanshan's restraint. Her 7 fox tails gathered above her head and around her, tightly surrounding herself. Almost there, because the magic circle of the Jingyi school was accidentally destroyed by Li Sun, the energy accumulated by the magic circle did not reach its peak at the last moment, and the power of the ninth heaven divine night thunder did not reach its maximum. It could not even be called the ninth heaven divine night thunder. There were many thunder methods in the world, but only the ninth heaven divine night thunder could kill the mystical silver fox. As soon as the power of the thunder method was weakened, it was immediately absorbed by the 7 indestructible fox tails of the mystical silver fox, and weakened its power. When it was passed to the mystical silver fox, its power was not even enough to kill her. However, although the power of the heavenly thunder was reduced, it was still the power of heaven after all. The mystical silver fox was seriously injured after taking the blow. She immediately hid under the ground and secretly adjusted her breath. The cultivators of the 2 sects of China and Japan had searched almost all the places within a radius of more than 10 miles from Suyi, but no one had thought of going deep underground to look for the trace of the mystical silver fox. In the past, the mystical silver fox had read the classics of Buddhism and Taoism, and had seen a lot. Naturally, she knew that the ninth heaven divine night thunder could not be activated by 1 or 2 cultivators with their own spiritual energy cultivation. It must be a terrifying thunder that could only be driven by a large magic circle. Obviously, Suyi did not have such a magic circle. Otherwise, she could feel the huge spiritual chi and spiritual energy of the magic circle at the first time. And she would definitely destroy the magic circle at the first time. In the magic circle that the mystical silver fox knew, the ninth heaven divine night thunder in front of her was obviously used as bait by Wang Yuanshan, and then moved through the absolute love extinguishing formation. However, no matter how smart the mystical silver fox was, she could never imagine why this fatal blow did not kill her. Moreover, the power of the heavenly thunder had decreased sharply at the last moment, which allowed her to escape. The mystical silver fox survived a great disaster. She was extremely shocked and also a little frightened. At this time, it was the most vulnerable time for the mystical silver fox. She withstood the heavenly thunder, and her chi and blood were fluctuating. She could hardly mobilize her jinqi. However, after she took a breather under the ninth earth for a while, she was able to move her jinqi. However, she seemed to be a little vigilant. The mystical silver fox had a lingering fear in her heart for Wang Yuanshan's absolute determination and fatal blow. Heaven Lightning Fox's Dragon Wang. Star to Silver. After the divine night god, she fell. And the god silver foxes she fell. After heaven divine silver dragon, she fell. God silver fox's mountain was. Li. After confirming that there were no other magic circles, and that the 9 heaven divine night thunder would not fall again, the mystical silver fox showed her true body again. This time, when she showed her true body, she immediately defeated the resistance of the cultivators of China and Japan. After losing Zhou Chang and Wang Yuanshan, they all knew that there was no one in front of them who could resist the angry revenge of the mystical silver fox. When Ise Shengguang heard the voice of the mystical silver fox, he couldn't help but pray to Amaterasu in despair. Then he knew that he would die. He let out a long sigh and said in a low voice, "If there is no disease for 7 years, there is no need to suffer for 3 years. If the cloud has no heart, it will be a poem. If the poem has no heart, it will not be bitter. When you are sleepy, you sleep during the day. When you wake up at night. If you don't have the desire to climb the 9 lotus platform, you won't have the sin of falling into 80,000 hell. If you live to the fullest, death is just a retirement." This was the masterpiece Cuckoo Temple, handed down from generation to generation by Maeda Keiji, the most legendary general in the world during the Warring States period in Japan. Although the words were not gorgeous, and the antithesis was questionable, the artistic conception in the poem was commendable. The reason why Ise Shengguang had a one-man style was that he was a diehard fan of Maeda Keiji. During the Warring States period, Maeda Keiji was known as the first romantic in the Warring States period, and the unparalleled kabuki. Although he was a famous general, his personal style had nothing to do with that of a famous general. Soon the Japanese were low-key and modest. They were cautious in their words and deeds. However, Maeda Keiji had learned from countless famous teachers. He boasted that he was good at dancing, music, tea ceremony, and all kinds of martial arts. The most glorious thing he had done in his life was to lead only 7 people to fight. In the middle of the night, he killed his way into the main formation of the first general, Mogami Yoshimitsu, and almost killed himself. Then he retreated overnight. After that battle, he immediately called himself the first famous general in the world, and first gun in the world. Maeda Keiji would often be naked in the winter, and would wear cotton clothes in the summer. When the 2 armies were at war, he would sing and dance in front of the formation. He would even strip naked. Sometimes, when he was excited, he would boast to anyone he met that his little brother was as thick as a child's arm, and how amazing his martial arts were. Such a character could be said to be an absolute anomaly among the Japanese. He was extremely accomplished in singing, dancing, and poetry. Even hundreds of years later in the modern society, there were still many people who deeply loved his poems and fantasies. The author of Fist of the North Star, Tetsuo Hara, used his deeds to create the famous manga Hua no Keiji, which was widely read in Japan at that time. Therefore, when Ise Shengguang wrote this poem, almost all the Japanese here knew the origin of this poem. Usually, when they read Maeda Keiji's poems and life stories, they did not feel particularly emotional. However, at that moment, with an invincible enemy in front of them and death at hand, all of them suddenly seemed to understand the artistic conception in Maeda Keiji's poem. For a moment, the surrounding Japanese cultivators felt the same way. Many of them cried in despair and began to recite, "If you live to the fullest, death is just a retirement." Many cultivators even took off their clothes like crazy and pointed their little brother at the sky. They stomped their feet and cursed, as if they were tired of living. "Kill me if you have the guts, and I'll reincarnate as soon as possible." Although the cultivators of the Chinese sects on the other side were also terrified and desperate, they were stunned when they saw that the Japanese were singing and dancing. Some of them were even naked. They really couldn't figure out how this group of Japanese, who were usually cautious and even cautious with their words, could do such a crazy thing at this moment. When the mystical silver fox saw their ugly behavior in the sky, she sneered in her heart. Finally, she was sure that these guys had no heart to resist. At this time, her young spirit flashed and returned to her body, which was hidden under the 9th earth. When she appeared again, She was already in the air between the two mountains. Suddenly, the figure of the mystical silver fox appeared. The 7 dancing golden fox tails were really like the rolling flames of hell, which made people's hearts tremble with fear. Many Japanese cultivators, who had been crazy before, were stunned at this time. They were frightened by the momentum of the mystical silver fox, and they were all stunned on the spot. At this time, on the top of the mountain of the Chinese cultivation sects, the cultivators of all sects were beating the drums of retreat without exception. They were just here to help out and participate in the battle. There was no need for them to die here with the Japanese. Du Fei of the Chuanjian Dragon sect said in a deep voice, "Everyone, we can't all die here. Let's all scatter and escape. No matter how powerful the mystical silver fox is, she can't leave us all here." Hearing this, everyone said, "Yes, we don't have to stay here and die with these Japanese." While they were talking, they suddenly heard the mystical silver fox shout, "You still want to escape? All of you go to hell." Everyone was shocked. They looked up at the mystical silver fox, only to see her 7 fox tails sweeping towards them in an instant. At this moment, the cultivators of all sects in the Chinese cultivation world on the top of the mountain were shocked, and jumped up one after another. The 7 tails of the mystical silver fox suddenly spread out like a peacock's tail, spreading in all directions like a waterfall. Countless thin fox silk, like a spider web, quickly chased after them. Many cultivators who escaped slowly were immediately caught up by the fox silk, and were instantly twisted into countless pieces. Ding Nan and Mao Yichang's cultivation was relatively high, and their reactions were also extremely fast. As soon as the mystical silver fox moved, they immediately escaped far away. But although their cultivation was high and their speed was fast, how could they be faster than the mystical silver fox? The two of them saw that the golden fox silk under their feet was like a maggot attached to a bone, following them like a shadow. Seeing that it was about to catch up with them, they felt a chill in their hearts and thought to themselves, "It seems that we can't escape this calamity today." The two of them looked at each other from afar. Just as they were about to close their eyes and wait for death, they suddenly heard a voice coming from the clouds. The voice was solemn, full of majesty and power. "Nan, Samanduo Jaluoji, tough." For a moment, the two of them didn't understand what the voice was saying. They only saw a big golden handprint flying out of the thundercloud and blasting towards the mystical silver fox. The two of them didn't understand, but the cultivators of various sects of Buddhism felt as if a bolt of lightning had flashed in their minds. When the monks on the 2 mountains saw the Mahamudra, they put their palms together modestly. The 2 middle fingers were erected like a block, the left index finger was upright and shaking, and the right index finger was open, showing the shape of a lion. This was the Lion Speed Seal, one of the 14 fundamental seals of the immovable Wisdom King, which symbolized the brave and fierce Bodhi heart. At this time, these monks who had been in despair suddenly became spirited, regardless of their countries, sects, and sections. They said loudly in unison, "Those who see me will obtain the Bodhi heart. Those who hear my name will stop cultivating good. Those who hear my words will obtain great wisdom. Those who know my heart will become a Buddha." At this time, the cultivators of the Taoists and the Shinto sect also came to their senses. Although they did not cultivate Buddhism, they all knew that this sentence was the famous oath of the immovable Wisdom King. Living in the fire gives birth to samadhi, burning the internal and external obstacles, and destroying all the enemies of the devil army. The cultivators of various sects, who had been rescued from death, suddenly widened their eyes and looked at the clouds. They saw a young man sitting cross-legged in the rolling thundercloud high in the sky, motionless. It was the reincarnated Wisdom King Li Yundong. Chapter 862. Li Yundong's speed was extremely fast. Before his body arrived, the Yang spirit had already arrived in an instant. As soon as he arrived, he saw the mystical silver fox start a massacre and chase after the cultivation world of the middle sun indiscriminately. Almost there without thinking, he immediately sent out a giant palm print. For the cultivators of Buddhism in China, this Mahamudra made them feel refreshed, as if they had come back to life. The mystical silver fox was even more shocked. No one was more familiar with this Mahamudra than she was. In the past, when she and the immovable Wisdom King fought fiercely, this Mahamudra Kung Fu had left a very deep impression on her. The mystical silver fox's fox tail, which had been chasing after everyone, immediately retracted and curled up into a ball-shaped barrier to protect herself. With a bang, the big handprint forcibly slapped her in the air and sent her flying more than 10 meters away. This time, the mystical silver fox could completely conclude that this must be the reincarnation of Wisdom King. There wouldn't be a second person in the world who could send him flying so far just by relying on the giant palm print. The two blood-red eyes of the mystical silver fox seemed to burn with a blazing flame. It was so angry that it almost turned into two burning fireballs. When enemies meet, their eyes turn red. Reincarnated Wisdom King, do you dare to show yourself? After the mystical silver fox stopped, its golden fox tail curled up. Half of it protected its body, and the other half jumped up and down, staring at the clouds covetously. At this time, Li Yundong had not yet reached Su Yi. Even though he had broken through the ninth thunder retribution, he still did not dare to be careless, because the opponent in front of him was the strongest cultivator in the Chinese cultivation world in 1,000 years. The cultivation world of China and Japan had joined hands to encircle her twice, but they had failed. Now the cultivation world of the two countries had joined hands for the first time, but they had still been defeated by her. Li Jiandong knew that no matter from which point of view, he could not lose. If he lost, the Chinese cultivation world would fall to the bottom, and Su Chan, Ziyuan, and Zhou Qin would definitely suffer a misfortune. Chao Kefi's divine sense and memory would also be completely absorbed by the mystical silver fox. Therefore, Li Yundong was particularly cautious. He hid his yang spirit body in the thunderclouds, only showing his figure faintly in the thunderclouds. He moved his position from time to time, so as to avoid any danger. You almost there, as the saying goes, what is false is true, and what is true is false. The unknown soldier Wang Yuanshan, who had appeared before, had given the mystical silver fox a huge surprise. A guy whom she had never heard of had almost died with her, which made the mystical silver fox particularly cautious. This guy called Wang Yuanshan almost caused him to fail miserably. How could this reincarnated Wisdom King, who had 1,000 years of enmity with him, be easy to provoke? Li Yundong did not dare to be careless, nor did the mystical silver fox. She stared at the sky, and her whole body began to bulge. She released it from afar, like a radar, constantly searching for Li Yundong's figure and aura. Once she locked Li Yundong's position, she would immediately launch a tentative attack. She wanted to see how powerful the Wisdom King of this life was after 1,000 years. The mystical silver fox and Li Yundong, who had been enemies for 1,000 years, looked at each other nervously and vigilantly. No one dared to make a move rashly. At this time, on the top of the mountain where the Japanese cultivation world was located, the cultivators of all sects widened their eyes and looked at the clouds in the sky. Wang Yuanshan had shown them the demeanor of a great cultivator who was old and immortal. At this time, Li Yundong was too young. Even though they were far away, their sharp eyes could see Li Yundong's young face flashing in the clouds from time to time. But this time, no one dared to look down on him. This young man, who sat high in the clouds, once defeated Masako Tachibana in Mount Koya, and the other time, he defeated several masters in the Japanese cultivation world in a row in Mount Longhu. These two deeds of severely injuring the Japanese cultivation world made the Japanese cultivation world completely recognize his identity as the reincarnated Wisdom King. Many Japanese cultivators thought, only the reincarnated Wisdom King can be so strong. There is nothing to be ashamed of being defeated by such a strong man. Therefore, as soon as Li Yundong appeared, many cultivators of all sects shouted excitedly. Some of the more experienced and prudent ones couldn't help sighing involuntarily. Ah, is this the reincarnated Wisdom King? He's really majestic. As the saying goes, A person's reputation is like the shadow of a tree. Li Yundong's reputation was built up from fierce battles. Although there were many thrilling and fierce battles, he had never been defeated so far. He could be called an invincible golden body. In the Chinese cultivation world, people gave him the nickname Invincible Li. In the Japanese cultivation world, people gave him the elegant name Fighting Lord. The reason why Li Yundong was able to get such a title was that most of the masters he had defeated had been famous for a long time. They were by no means ordinary people. Because of this, although Li Yundong was young, as soon as he appeared, he immediately shocked everyone. Some older Japanese cultivators even called him Lord, and didn't dare to call him by his name. This was the logic of the Japanese. As long as one side was strong enough for them to look up to, they would be the most respectful group of people in the world. Ise Xinguang hadn't expected that Li Yundong would arrive at this time. Even though he thought that he was indifferent to everything and had seen through death, he couldn't help but be a little excited at this time. He said to Ise Chuyan, "The immovable wisdom king is here. We are saved." Ise Izumo looked at the clouds in a daze. She said slowly, "Heavenly Lord Battler has become stronger again. It's really awe-inspiring." Ise Chuyan knew very well that the last time she had fought with Li Yundong, he had been seriously injured. If Li Yundong had been fully injured, and they had fought, she was afraid that she would have lost even more miserably. Now Li Yundong actually dared to sit at the top of the thunderclouds and ignore the heavenly thunder. Such boldness and demeanor were really awe-inspiring. Ise Xinguang said with emotion, "Chuyan, this battle in front of us is the Battle of Tianwang Mountain in the cultivation world. It's rare to see one in 900 years. No matter whether we win or lose, we are lucky enough to witness and participate in this battle. We will have no regrets in this life." These words made the surrounding cultivators of various Japanese sects nod in agreement. For a moment, everyone seemed to have forgotten the fear of death and looked at the field with great excitement and eagerness. The Japanese cultivation world was like this, not to mention the Chinese cultivation world. At this moment, for thousands of years, no one had been able to get such awe and expectation from the Chinese cultivation world and the Japanese cultivation world at the same time. The cultivators of the two countries held their breaths and looked at the two of them with rapt attention, not daring to breathe. Although they saw that the mystical silver fox and Li Yundong were looking at each other from afar in the sky and on the ground, and the world was so quiet that there was only the rustling of wind and rain and rolling thunder, they knew that once the two of them fought, it would be an earth-shattering battle. The mystical silver fox searched for a while, but it was still unable to lock onto Li Yundong's aura and location. He seemed to have merged with the thunderclouds. She couldn't find his aura anywhere, but he seemed to be everywhere. The thunderclouds were rolling, and the lightning was flashing. His looming figure was everywhere. The mystical silver fox felt a chill in her heart and said coldly, "Wisdom King, don't play such a trick to deceive little children. Don't you think it's shameful?" The mystical silver fox couldn't lock onto Li Yundong's aura, and with the previous example of Wang Yuanshan, the mystical silver fox didn't dare to rush into the clouds to fight with Li Yundong, so she tried to use the method of arousing the reincarnated Wisdom King from the clouds. This was exactly what Li Yundong wanted. He said lightly, "Mystical silver fox, if you think I'm playing a little child's trick, why don't you come up? Let's compete in the thunderclouds. No matter who wins or loses, it will be enough to be a good story in the future. What do you think?" Li Yundong's fearless words made the mystical silver fox more vigilant. The fox was born to be suspicious. At this time, Li Yundong's false behavior made her even more uncertain about Li Yundong's background. The mystical silver fox narrowed her eyes slightly. Although she was more and more vigilant, she was unwilling to fight with Li Yundong like this. Although she was afraid of the reincarnated Wisdom King, she also had a great psychological advantage. She had defeated him 1,000 years ago. Could it be that she couldn't do it 1,000 years later? With a thought, the mystical silver fox secretly mobilized the Jinqi in her body, making her essence, blood, and qi boil to a peak state. However, others could not see it from the outside at all. They saw that she was motionless, as quiet as a virgin. No one could tell from her slim and elegant posture that there was a power that could destroy the heavens and the earth in her. Others couldn't notice that the mystical silver fox was accumulating strength, but Li Yundong could feel that a terrible danger was pouncing on him. He was shocked and immediately made a prompt decision. He shouted loudly, "Mystical silver fox, if you don't dare to come up, forget it. I'll go down to find you." After that, he crossed his hands and flipped his 10 fingers like a blooming lotus flower. He quickly pinched one of the 14 seals of the immovable Wisdom King, the Treasure Mountain seal, which symbolized firm and vigorous power, and blasted it toward the mystical silver fox. The mystical silver fox didn't expect that Li Yundong would dare to take the initiative to attack her at this critical moment. It was as if the Buddha had come in person, looking down at her and seeing through everything about her. Her heart was even more shocked, and she subconsciously took a defensive position. She wrapped herself tightly with her 7 golden fox tails, leaving only a very small gap, so that she could observe the reincarnated Wisdom King in the clouds. Li Jiandong knew that he had to buy as much time as possible for the arrival of Zi Yuan, Su Chan, Zhou Qin, and the others. The flying body was not as good as the Yang spirit, so it was impossible for it to arrive in an instant. Even if his body could arrive at an amazing speed with the help of Su Chan and the others, it would still take a long time. If he could not hold the mystical silver fox tightly, she would be hesitant and surprised. Once the mystical silver fox saw through his empty city strategy, it would be a little bad. At this time, Li Yundong knew that he was weak, but he knew that the mystical silver fox didn't know his situation. Therefore, the weaker he was, the more he had to take the initiative to attack and put on a fearless look. He repeatedly blasted the Mahamudra at the mystical silver fox. Every move was powerful and heavy, causing the world to tremble slightly. In the scenic area of Su Ye's killing stone, bursts of golden light could be seen from afar. It was a spectacular sight. The cultivation world in the middle day saw that every move of Li Yundong seemed to have the power of a dragon and a tiger. Its power was so great that it was enough to shake the mountains and move the earth. It was already a great thing for others to make one move, but Li Yundong made so many Mahamudra without any effort, and the power of each move was constantly increasing. This was really amazing. For others, this Mahamudra was an extremely terrifying killing move, but for the mystical silver fox, it was just an ordinary trick. Her 7 foxtails were bright and soft. No matter how powerful the force was, it would be naturally offset by a lot of force. In addition, with the natural defensive power of the fox demon's real body, the mystical silver fox seemed to be able to deal with the explosive Mahamudra with ease. The mystical silver fox had been quietly observing Li Yundong in the clouds, as if she wanted to wait for his spiritual power to be consumed for a while before making a move. The people on both sides of the mountain saw that the mystical silver fox was being bombarded by Li Yundong's Mahamudra, but she seemed to have no power to fight back. Many people cheered excitedly. However, as the time of the Mahamudra's bombardment increased, the mystical silver fox still didn't move at all. She was like a rock in the stormy waves. This kind of silence doubled her majesty and strength, as if she had turned into a dormant volcano at this time, accumulating power. Once she exploded, she would destroy everything. At this moment, the world was filled with the rumbling sound of the Mahamudra bombardment, but there was a strange chill in everyone's heart. Gradually, the cheers on the top of the mountain disappeared. Everyone looked at the silent mystical silver fox in horror, waiting for her to explode. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.